Chapter 39. Chapter 39. Sitting with his legs crossed, Tian was fully immersed in cultivating heaven and earth reincarnation and gaining insight on heaven and earth conflagration. Damn, don't they all come in pairs? Moments after he sat down to rest, a swoosh came out from nowhere. Tian had a vantage point over the cliff and could see two shadows, one chasing after another at a distance. He could not help but find it amusing. He had only met two people fighting over an herb after he entered Hidden Dragon Isle. Not even a single soul was seen for the rest of the day. There was someone at last, actually two of them, and it seemed like they were also in a brawl over something. However, he was all by himself, cultivating alone. Put down the green onyx fruit and I will leave your corpse intact. A booming voice blasted through the atmosphere. As soon as it stopped, a tall, burly figure leaped into the air and jumped right in front of the person who was running away. It's her. What a coincidence. The two warriors came near the cliff, and Tian caught a good glimpse of their faces. There was a tall and well-built man who seemed to be in his mid-20s that was a Tier 8 warrior spirit who held an ordinary grade spiritual equipment. 5 yards away, this man was faced by a petite lady in her early 20s. She was an unmatched beauty, yet she looked pitiful as her fair, glowing face had smudges of blood at the corner of her mouth. Yiyi from Misty Pavilion. Tian did not expect to see Misty Pavilion's Yiyi, who was one of the sect's core disciples. A Tier 6 warrior spirit disciple who made it to the core. That puzzled him because Misty Pavilion was not short of Tier 9 warrior spirit disciples. It was Bai Yen who told him that Yi's true identity was not to be underestimated, as the elders of Misty Pavilion were also clueless about her origins and her background. Humph, dream as you wish, but the green onyx fruit will not be yours. Her voice was sweet, melodious, and had a mystical quality about it. Her pretty eyes glanced around for an escape route as she knew she could not fend off the Tier 8 warrior spirit powerhouse. If that's the case, I have both you and the green onyx fruit then. Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique. Tian had a sly grin in his face. No one could possibly remain untempted by such an attractive woman. Since there was no one around, he would be filled with joy if he could get his hands on green onyx fruit and have his way with this beauty while he was at it. As soon as he finished what he said, Tian displayed Storm Cloud Sword, the ordinary grade peerless equipment that he was holding. At that instant, the sword's glints swirled around and swiftly formed into a six-hilt sword of silhouettes. The winds and clouds rolled around with imposing vigor in the atmosphere. Tian, who stood atop the cliff, was deeply shaken. This Tier 8 warrior spirit had demonstrated Mighty Storm Cloud Sword technique from Tianjin Empire's Divine Sword sect. It was so powerful that its strength could easily surpass his vast obscure extermination. Senior sister, would you share one of your green onyx fruit with your junior brother? Tian transmitted his voice to the panic-stricken Yiyi. He was determined to get the green onyx fruit, but it might not be a good idea to seize it from her. He also did not want Tian to lay hands on this pretty lady. Skynet Shield, block. Yiyi was terrorized to the core as she looked at the mighty glints of the blade. Tian had been hunting her down for hours, and she only managed to make it this far using the numerous treasures in her possession. Seeing that her opponent had started hurling such brutal attacks, Yiyi was out of ideas and had no choice but to use her last piece of treasure. The faint voice transmitted to her at that instant made her even more petrified with the realization that her situation had just become worse. Rumble. The few strokes of sword silhouettes hit Skynet Shield with a thunderous bang. Yiyi was violently pushed a few yards back. Skynet Shield was losing its glimmer. This peerless grade spiritual equipment had blocked an attack from Mighty Storm Cloud Sword technique and was wounded. You have quite some treasures with you. A peerless grade spiritual equipment, it would be of nice use to me. Let's see how you'll hold up to this. Tian was actually taken aback by the fact that his Mighty Storm Cloud Sword technique, which had always been invincible, was blocked by his opponent's peerless grade spiritual equipment. He had been chasing after her for a while, and she had an endless hoard of treasures. Greed rose from the bottom of his heart. All right. If you eliminate him, I'll give you the green onyx fruit. Yiyi started talking toward a direction where there was no one, which freaked Tian out. He quickly thought that Yiyi was trying to deceive him. As expected, Yiyi turned around and ran away. You'd think I'm easily tricked, but I'm not a kid. I'll let you know what I'm made of. Tian was convinced that Yiyi intended to deceive him as she was already running away. He did not hesitate to use motion skills to pursue her. That was when a fatal chi came down on him. Vast obscure extermination, time to die. A strange, destructive blade aura descended from the sky at top speed as soon as those ice-cold words were said. The blade aura transformed into countless silver needles that tore through the air and went towards Tian's direction. There was a tinge of vast obscure extermination chi in the air that made Tian quiver involuntarily. Mighty storm cloud sword technique, thousand shadows of sword flickers. He bellowed and swung his storm cloud sword around rapidly. Numerous blade shadows shot toward the incoming attack. Clink, clatter. Rumble. The air was in a constant quiver as the clashing of blade shadows and silver needles brought about a lot of clatters. A giant boom marked the end when the two hefty blade auras collided. The explosion threw Tian out of sight and created a great hole in the ground. Tian descended, looked at Yiyi who was standing afar and grinned ever so slightly. It's you. Yiyi saw Tian's figure and recognized him straight away. This teenage boy with a seemingly rubbish cultivation level was the one whom the warrior ascendant powerhouse wanted as a disciple. She was nonetheless comforted to see someone from Sky Dragon Empire. Blurg. Somewhere far away, sounds of blood being spat out could be heard. Tian was pale in the face while he spewed a mouthful of blood. He was also in deep, deep shame. He was from Divine Sword Sect, which was a sect that specialized in sword cultivation. No one could ever compete with them in Eastern Spirit Greenland, and yet he had lost to a blade aura today. As this was not a fighting ring where he could just admit defeat to save his life, he was more disappointed with his loss. He gave an icy stare at the teenager in front of him and was at a loss for words. A 15-year-old teenager who only had a warrior cultivation level. He also noticed that the weapon held by the boy was an unexpected peerless grade. Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique, Destroyer Sword. I'll serve you your death. A destructive force tore up the air in the skies. All the plants and boulders were transformed into numerous sharp and glinting blade shadows. Every drop of blood seemed to have left Tian's face. He was suffering, and his eyes were filled with hatred. He's a Tier 8 warrior spirit. Beware, Junior Brotherly, as this is Mighty Storm Cloud Sword Technique's forbidden skill from Divine Sword Sect? Yiyi was shouting words of caution to Tian. She was then taken aback by her concern for this stranger. Ice and Fire Ring. Tian could not risk making mistakes at this point as well. He had experience cultivating astounding sword technique and understood the strengths of such sword forms and skills. Not to mention that the Destroyer Sword had exceeded his expectations. It was even more appalling than his vast obscure extermination. He could not display thousand shadows of fluttering flowers since he had not cultivated the technique, so it was a waste of time talking about it. Ice and Fire Ring had a powerful defense. It would be wise to first protect himself. Ice Vitality Divine Fist, 300-mile Frost. Immemorial Ice Crystal was mobilized under Ice and Fire Ring's display. The temperature within 100 yards dropped drastically and the surrounding area turned into a glacier. Meanwhile, Ice Vitality Divine Fist headed towards Tian's direction with smashing force and speed. Rumble. Crack. Splash. The glacier's formation had frozen the blade shadows formed by the numerous plants and boulders in ice, which greatly slowed down its attacking speed. Destroyer Sword's chi was also successfully held up by the ice barrier. Yiyi and Tian were bewildered by the glacier taking shape. While Tian was stunned by the ongoing business, an icy chi of doom hit and turned him into an ice statue. That ice statue shattered into smithereens under Tian's single punch. Tian's eyes were churning despair and horror before everything was gone with the fragmented pieces. Thud thud thud. Li Lingtian's body recoiled a few yards. The ice and fire ring in front of him gradually disappeared and lost its glow. What a terrifying destroyer sword! He was utterly shocked as all the other blade shadows had been frozen and slowed down in the glacier, yet the destroyer sword managed to break through it. If not for the defense from ice and fire ring, he would have been heavily wounded. Oh no, someone's coming this way. His divine mindfulness picked up a strong chi 1.5 miles away which was heading toward them. The speed detected was amazingly fast and was as good as his breeze technique. Li Lingtian stopped talking. Su Tian's storage sack and storm cloud sword were quickly stashed away and off he dashed toward Lui. Both of them then bolted from the scene. Their shadows disappeared immediately in the dark of the night. They would be safe in the forest because no one would ever go there unless they encountered demonic beasts. How frightening! Icepath Warrior's Soul and 3,000-mile Frost. And Divine Sword Sect's Forbidden Skill Destroyer Sword. For sure it wasn't easy to steer clear from its attacks. They better not cross paths with me though, the murderer of Divine Sword Sect's members was nothing compared to me. Li Lingtian and Lui were not even gone for 2 minutes before a shadow tore through the atmosphere and descended at the scene. The young adult was surprised when he looked over the huge pit in the ground, the ice bits of the remaining glacier, and the blade aura in the atmosphere. Warrior King Powerhouse. Chapter 40, Lui. Chapter 40, Lui. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. In the forest, a beautiful petite maiden and a 15-year-old young man in white ran non-stop for half an hour. Both of them were exhausted. Junior brother, how's your wound? Lui noticed Li Lingtian had stopped running. With a worried expression, she asked softly. The girl was proud and arrogant. With a cold and expressionless face, she treated everyone with indifference. However, this young man was different, because he had an appealing charisma and aura. Being only a Tier 9 warrior who had entered the depths of the hidden Dragon Isle, it shocked her that he could take an attack that she could not. No wonder the Sky Cloud sect dared to grant this genius entrance to the hidden Dragon Isle. The care she had shown to this young man was, mostly, because he had saved her. It's alright, just a small wound, I just have to tend to it for a bit. How about you, senior sister? Li Lingtian carefully inspected the wound on his body. The injury sustained from the destroyer sword's shockwave would only require some minor treatment. Although the ice and fire ring was extraordinary, his cultivation level was still too low. Otherwise, he would not have been injured. It was not by choice that Li Lingtian had to run throughout the journey. His divine mindfulness had discovered the existence of a powerhouse on a warrior king's level. No matter how confident he was in his abilities, Li Lingtian would not dare pick a fight with a warrior king at this point. Junior brother Li, have this green onyx fruit as thanks for saving me. Lui spoke seriously as she brought out a fist-sized fruit and gave it to Li Lingtian. Although he had only saved her because he wanted the green onyx fruit, he was still sincerely grateful. That was women for you. Whoever pleased them would be seen as a good person. Thank you, senior sister Lu. This green onyx fruit is very important to me as a Tier 9 warrior. Otherwise, I wouldn't take it from you. Li Lingtian showed a hint of embarrassment. It was already hard for the Dragon Empire and they needed to be helping each other. He felt slightly guilty for asking for the fruit from Lui in exchange for saving her from danger. By the way, I made this spirit binding pill. It could be useful to you, senior sister. Please take it. Upon completing his sentence, Li Lingtian took out a jade bottle from his storage sack. He had made this bottle of pills when he had free time during the competition period in an attempt to improve his pill art. You're an apothecary. Lui had a shocked expression on her delicate face. It was already shocking to know that this 15-year-old genius had cultivated to the level of a Tier 9 warrior. She had not expected him to also be an apothecary. The gentle yet cold beauty now had the expression of a little girl. Her shocked expression made her look even more charming. Coupled with her power from the Misty Pavilion cultivation, she looked like a goddess from legends. Hee, I was bored so I just practiced it for fun. Li Tian said as he laughed. Facing this peerless beauty, his heart pounded non-stop. A spirit-binding pill, not bad, Yiyi said and shook her head wordlessly. She felt at a loss for words knowing that he had only practiced it because he was bored. Yiyi opened the jade bottle to check if they were actually spirit-binding pills. Spirit-binding pills could only be made by Tier 2 apothecaries and this young man was only 15 years old. No one would believe that he was a Tier 2 apothecary. However, what she saw next made her even more astonished. What? This is a superior grade 2 spirit-binding pill. You're a great apothecary. 2? I'm not sure, I just practiced. I can't use spirit-binding pills easily because I'm a warrior. When I produced the pills, I was already a Tier 9 warrior. Li Tian made a helpless gesture. It could only be blamed on the fact that he had cultivated too quickly. Let me see your vitality pill. Don't tell me that it's also a superior one. Yiyi carefully placed the spirit-binding pill into her storage sack. A superior spirit-binding pill was extremely powerful. Although she had owned countless treasures, she had never owned a superior spirit-binding pill. Here. Li Tian took out a jade bottle that only had a few vitality pills inside. Since he was already at the Tier 9 peak, using pills would not be beneficial. It would simply be a waste if he consumed it. He continued walking forward after handing the jade bottle to Yiyi. This place was not safe, he had to find a safe place to heal his wounds and also refine the green onyx fruit. As a warrior, the green onyx fruit had endless benefits and could almost boost his warrior spirit by a 100%. Otherwise, he would not have gone against that Tier 8 warrior spirit powerhouse just to obtain it. Peerless, it's a peerless vitality pill. Behind him, Yiyi looked at the pill in her hand with a shocked expression. It was a legendary peerless pill. In the divine martial continent, a peerless pill was only spoken of in legends. It was impossible, even for a spiritual apothecary, to make a grade 1 peerless pill. She never thought that this young man in front of her would have such amazing capabilities. Not only that, his pill art was even more astounding. It was impossible for her not to be astonished. Junior brother, please wait. Yiyi noticed Li Tian had continued walking forward and quickly ran towards Li Tian with a smile on her face, bearing a hint of slyness. She had a smile that could topple a city, another smile from her would topple an entire country. Within the forest, upon a small hill, Li Tian sat in a cave with his eyes closed and knees crossed, using his full power to heal his wounds. Meanwhile, Yiyi also sat down to meditate and rest. Li Tian had originally planned to heal his wounds and cultivate alone, but Yiyi had offered to protect him. Left with no choice, Li Tian accepted her offer. Having this beauty beside him was a blessing to his eyes. However, he could not concentrate since it was a dangerous place. As the heaven and earth reincarnation circulated, Li Tian placed a great spirit pill into his mouth. His injuries from the shockwave quickly healed as the pill started to refine. As expected of the powerful sacred healing medicine, his injuries and true chi had completely recovered after only an hour. If I don't use this green onyx fruit now, when else would I use it? Li Tian thought as he held the green onyx fruit. He then quickly bit into it and finished it with a few bites. It was almost as if he was doing something righteous. Yiyi, who had just finished cultivating, could not hold in her laughter after seeing Li Tian. This junior brother was hilarious to her. This young man, at 15 years old, was already a Tier 9 warrior. He might even be a grade 4 great apothecary. She did not expect him to be this amusing. The look on his face when he ate the green onyx fruit was simply hilarious. Li Tian was a bit shocked when he noticed Yiyi was laughing at him. It was only then he realized that he indeed looked quite funny. Though, at the end of the day it was only a green onyx fruit and nothing more. However, he could not be bothered by Yiyi at this moment. The power of the green onyx fruit was spreading quickly within his body. Its astonishing power and spiritual chi was rushing towards his meridians. As the heaven and earth reincarnation circulated continuously, it turned the green onyx fruit's power and spiritual chi into true chi. His true chi had now started to change. It became even more intense, almost as if it had an actual form. After half an hour, Li Lingtian's whole body was covered in sweat and he had a pained expression. Tier 9 warrior, break through it. Li Lingtian shouted as the true chi from his entire body rushed towards the warrior spirit boundaries. At this moment, the powerful true chi successfully broke the warrior spirit boundaries and his true chi started to quickly take an actual form. Strands of true chi circulated in his dantian and meridians, which eventually flowed into his dantian. The immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart also received more nourishment. Li Lingtian clearly felt that his connection to the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart had gotten stronger. This meant that as long as he reached a certain cultivation level, he could fully refine the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart. When that happens, his cultivation level would increase by leaps and bounds. A strong essence spread throughout the air as Yiyi showed a surprised expression. Although she knew that the green onyx fruit had a high chance of enabling him to become a warrior spirit, she could not believe that Li Lingtian could cultivate this quickly. It only took him half an hour to enter the warrior spirit realm. Absorb. Li Lingtian tightened both of his fists as the essence in the cave quickly rushed towards him. Eventually, it turned into essential chi which entered Li Lingtian's meridian and flowed into his dantian. Congratulations on reaching the warrior spirit realm, junior brother. You have surely become stronger. Yiyi looked at Li Lingtian as he opened his eyes. His clear eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. He became even more attractive, and Yiyi could not help but smile. Senior sister Lu is already a tier 6 warrior spirit, while I've only just entered the warrior spirit realm. Li Lingtian said as he stood up. He felt like his entire body was filled with an explosive power which had him feeling full of confidence. The warrior spirit realm and warrior realm were on completely different levels. Not only had his true chi become even purer, but it had also increased tremendously. He would be able to master even more skills after some practice. Now that Li Lingtian was in the warrior spirit realm, he could surely kill Tian, who was a tier 8 warrior spirit that specialized in the divine sword, without much effort if they were to face each other again. Previously, he had had to use a sneak attack to kill Tian. Last time, Li Lingtian had to descend from the sky as he displayed the vast obscure extermination, relying on its great force to injure Tian. Otherwise, he would not have been able to use his Ice Vitality Divine Fist to kill Tian. I'm older than you. Besides junior brother, you were able to kill Tian, who was a tier 8 warrior spirit, when you were only a tier 9 warrior. Now that you're in the warrior spirit realm, you don't need to worry much if you have to go against any strong warrior spirits. Yiyi showed a rarely seen smile on her petite face, which was usually cold and expressionless. It was a smile that could topple an entire city. Li Lingtian was shaken by her gentle look. His heart pounded continuously, and he did not dare take another look at Yiyi. For a moment, he felt really awkward and embarrassed. He had been a human for both of his lives, and yet he still felt embarrassed in front of her. Chapter 41, Second Prince Tian Wuji. Chapter 41, Second Prince Tian Wuji. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. By the way, senior sister. I'm going out tomorrow to look for treasure. What are your plans? Being accompanied by a lady is not a good thing. Besides, this lady is a disciple from the Misty Pavilion, and my Sky Cloud sect does not have a good relationship with them. Li Lingtian thought. This was a world where only powerhouses are respected. Not to mention people from different sects, even if they were from the same sect, they would still kill each other without hesitation. I'm going to go search for others from the same sect tomorrow. Yiyi was stunned for a moment, and her alert eyes were filled with curiosity. This young man was definitely different from the others. Other warriors would have surely wanted to be accompanied by such a beauty. In the Misty Pavilion, countless geniuses would want to get close to a beauty like her, but it was as hard as ascending to the sky. However, she had not expected that he would hint that she should leave instead. Yiyi felt a sudden sadness in her heart, which was probably due to the fact that she was high above the rest and was accustomed to always being treated well. She was not used to this sudden change in treatment. They did not talk that night, as Tian was meditating to cultivate a stable state. Now that he had achieved the warrior spirit realm, there were great changes within his body. Not only were the fire dragon's heart and immemorial ice crystal inside his dantian more stable than before, but there was also the hint of another presence in his dantian. Although the presence was weak, it was there. Earthpath True Chi, is it an Earthpath warrior soul? Tian started to check carefully, and his expressions kept changing with his confusion. This True Chi was definitely the True Chi of an Earthpath warrior soul. He had just become a warrior spirit, and now he had acquired another type of warrior soul. How could he not be shocked? If he were to continue breaking through the realms, he may eventually have an all-round warrior soul. In this divine martial continent, the type of warrior soul was decided at birth. If someone had two types of warrior souls, they would truly be a genius. Even if he had two types of warrior souls, one would be the main while the other would be the support. It was impossible for both types to be balanced. He had not expected to acquire another type of warrior soul right after his breakthrough. If this news were to be spread, the divine martial continent would surely be shaken. This must have been caused by the heaven and earth reincarnation. Though Tian was unsure, it could only be attributed to the heaven and earth reincarnation. The heaven and earth reincarnation was, originally, not a technique from the divine martial continent, but a sacred technique that transcended the level of gods. There are 5 elements of heaven and earth. When the 5 elements are in balance, heaven and earth will be formed. Now that Tian had figured out this riddle, he displayed the heaven and earth reincarnation again. The golden words formed in his head started to combine and became a complete technique. When the 5 elements are balanced. Oh God, shouldn't it be impossible to cultivate all of the 5 elements? Tian was stunned. He had already obtained the Earth Path Warrior Soul, Fire Path Warrior Soul, and Ice Path Warrior Soul. Though water was gentle while ice was rigid, they shared the same source. This meant that Tian was originally a Water Path Warrior Soul. This meant that out of the 5 elements of warrior souls, Tian had already obtained 3 elements. As long as he can cultivate the Wood Path and Metal Path, he would obtain a total of 5 elements. When all 5 elements were obtained, heaven and earth would be balanced. His cultivation speed would be godlike, and he would obtain fearsome power. By then, he would be way stronger than what warriors from the same tier could ever imagine. One type of warrior soul would be one type of power, while 5 types of warrior souls would be 5 different types of powers. It would not be as simple as 1 + 1 = 2 once achieved. Once he obtained all 5 elements, he could ignore the main 5 elements of this world. This was because if an opponent was a fire path, he could go against them with a water path warrior soul. If his opponent was a metal path, he could go against them with a wood path warrior soul, as metal was weak to wood. Tian would have a warrior soul that could go against his opponents regardless of the type of warrior soul they had. Not only would he have a warrior soul that was strong against his opponent, he could also use his 4 other warrior souls as support against his opponents, which would make him extremely powerful. When Tian thought of this, he felt very excited. He was already really powerful with just the ice and fire warrior souls. If he had all 5 elements of warrior souls, he would be invincible. If Tian wanted to obtain another 2 types of warrior spirits, he would need to increase his cultivation level to Warrior King and then Warrior Ascendant. Only when he has achieved Warrior Ascendant would he acquire a total of 5 elements. However, this was only his speculation. He still did not know if reality would be the same as his assumptions. Regardless, one thing that could be confirmed was that he would only obtain another warrior soul when his cultivation level increases. After that, Tian started to focus on cultivating. As long as he continued to work hard, he would have a bright future. Naturally, he could not cultivate his skills in such a place. Besides, Yiyi was still there, and he could not reveal any of his secrets to her. The next day, Tian left the cave. He did not bother Lu Yi as he saw that she was still meditating and left immediately. Li Ling Tian flew towards the north in a flash. Now that Li Ling Tian was in the warrior spirit realm, he felt more confident. As long as it was not someone who was a top-level super genius, he could completely ignore them. On a huge lake, there were hundreds of warriors repeatedly attacking a strong demonic beast. 2. Roar. Roar. 2. A huge sky-splitting roar, followed by countless blasting and explosion sounds, caused water from the lake to explode towards the sky. The noises from these happenings were truly fearsome. Quick, don't show any mercy. Once this demonic beast is killed, we'll split the ingredients and medicinal supplies that we can obtain from it. A warrior, who was a Tier 9 warrior spirit, shouted. He continued waving the premium spiritual equipment in his hand, while fierce attacks bombarded the demonic beast like a thunderstorm. This demonic beast was around 98 feet tall, its huge body similar to a small mountain. There were hundreds of warrior spirit-tiered warriors bombarding it with formidable attacks, but none of them managed to make a fatal blow on this demonic beast. Tier 4, this is a Tier 4 pseudo-dragon beast. 10 miles away from the lake, Li Ling Tian stopped and glanced with his divine mindfulness. Now that he had achieved the warrior spirit realm, his divine mindfulness could be used from as far as 30 miles away. From his divine mindfulness, he saw a 98 feet tall demonic beast which was like a small mountain. Li Ling Tian was very familiar with this demonic beast. It was almost the same as the dragon from his past life. However, this beast was a pseudo-dragon beast, which meant that although it only had a hint of dragon's blood, it was not a real dragon. It's as strong as a warrior ascendant powerhouse. They're really looking for death. Li Ling Tian observed the warriors and pseudo-dragon beast from afar using his divine mindfulness, and then looked for a hidden spot to meditate and rest. Only after those warriors stopped would he act. *CK, there are quite a lot of people who want to be hunters. While Li Ling Tian sat with his knees crossed and meditated, he used his divine mindfulness to check the surroundings for a moment. He discovered a few people who had carefully hidden their presence. They also did not have a weak cultivation level and were at least a Tier 7 warrior spirit or higher. Boom. 2, 2. Boom. 2, 2. Roar. Roar. 2. Loud noises from explosives and roars from the beast sounded continuously. Meanwhile, as the pseudo-dragon beast swung its huge tail, countless warriors were suddenly smashed into pieces, and blood rained the sky. Trash, a bunch of trash. A cold voice said. Suddenly, a dashing figure jumped out and in a blink of an eye, he had arrived above the pseudo-dragon beast. A young warrior in a blue shirt, who radiated a strong presence, could be seen. He looked down at the warriors who were constantly attacking the pseudo-dragon beast with a proud stance. Tian Jin Empire, Tian Wuji. Tier 2 Warrior King. Tian Jin Empire, Second Prince, Tian Wuji. Countless people knew about this youth, who was standing in the air with his weapon. All of them were extremely shocked. He was one of the strongest people of all time. Obey my commands, and I shall reward those who help me capture this pseudo-dragon beast. Tian Wuji looked down at the huge pseudo-dragon beast, his face filled with greed. This is a Tier 4 demonic beast with really strong offensive and defensive abilities. It would surely be a killer weapon if used in the army. What relationship does the Tian Jin Empire have with my Southern Empire? Such ignorance. In your dreams. It's not like this pseudo-dragon beast is owned by the Tian Jin Empire. If you want to capture it, then capture it yourself. I want to slay it. Let's take action and slay this pseudo-dragon beast. Ingredients from a Tier 4 are really rare. That's right, don't listen to him. 2, 2. For a moment, though countless warriors shouted loudly, their arms never stopped. They attacked the pseudo-dragon beast together with all their strength. In the distance, Li Ling Tian frowned. He had a pained expression and his eyes became dull as if he had just received a great mental attack. What on earth is trying to direct my soul? Li Ling Tian said to himself. The expression on his face grew even more pained. His body then suddenly shot out and went towards the north quickly. Chapter 42, Chapter 42, Nine Yang's Sacred Fire. Chapter 42, Nine Yang's Sacred Fire. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Die. 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 All of you, just die. As Li Ling Tian ran recklessly along the way, warriors who had sensed that he was only a Tier 1 warrior spirit chased after Li Ling Tian with the malicious intent of stealing from him. However, facing Li Ling Tian, they were all killed in a single blow. They did not have the slightest of strength to fight against him. Even the warrior who was a Tier 8 warrior spirit super genius was killed in a punch. Ice Vitality Divine Fist, 300 Mile Frost. Whoosh. Poof. A Tier 9 warrior spirit peak genius was crushed into pieces by Li Lingtian's Ice Vitality Divine Fist. The backlash caused Li Lingtian to spew out blood. This was the 5th time that he had used the Ice Vitality Divine Fist, causing him to have serious internal injuries. In spite of that, he could not stop himself. Li Lingtian was being controlled by a mysterious presence. It controlled him to run towards the north without stop, killing everyone along the way, regardless if they were gods or demons. Tier 2 Warrior Spirit Breakthrough. After the countless fights and injuries, continuous usage of 10,000 spirit pill for healing and constant swallowing of spirit binding pills allowed Li Lingtian to break through and become a Tier 2 warrior spirit within a day. 1 day. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days had gone by, and a month soon passed. Li Lingtian's clothes were covered in bloodstains and his face was pale. However, he had already managed to raise his cultivation level to a Tier 3 warrior spirit. In his journey, Li Lingtian had killed countless strong demonic beasts and warriors, and his storage sack was filled with pills. The more Li Lingtian flew towards the north, the clearer he felt the presence's attraction. Li Lingtian also had a strong feeling that the presence was something familiar. Yet, there was still a slight feeling of fear and strangeness regarding this familiar presence. On this day, Li Lingtian reached the front of a huge mountain. The presence's attraction in his heart had already reached its peak. He knew that whatever that was leading him was close by. While looking at this mountain that reached the clouds, Li Lingtian felt a strong presence. He felt extremely shocked that there was such a strong presence in this mountain. Who are you? Show yourself. Li Lingtian shouted loudly. The feeling of attraction stopped here. This type of attraction had caused him to feel a sense of fear. I've been waiting for you for a long time. It has been an entire 3,000 reincarnations. 3,000 reincarnations, not bad. You're not as strong as I expected, but you're not considered trash. Sigh, you're not considered trash, because you're worse than trash. 35 years, and you're still just a mere ant. I feel disappointed. A husky voice sounded in the air. However, rather than saying it sounded in the air, it actually projected itself in Li Lingtian's mind. This voice was talking to itself while Li Lingtian stared into the air in horror as if he just saw a ghost. In his eyes, he saw that the tall mountain flew up and smashed onto him mercilessly. Who the hell are you? Stop playing with me. Li Lingtian was already numbed. He himself was the only one in this world who knew that he could reincarnate. He had spent 20 years in his past life, while he is 15 years old in his current life, which makes it an exact 35 years. Li Lingtian did not expect that it would know about his secret that clearly, and it even said that he was worse than trash. Li Lingtian was confused by its inexplicable words. I'm you, and you're me. But it can only be said that I'm more unfortunate. My reincarnation is worse than trash. Wham! 2, the husky voice said calmly. Then, the huge mountain came crashing down from the sky. Li Lingtian glanced at the mountain for a moment, and a strong wind tore his body, causing him to be covered in blood. Li Lingtian did not have a single thought about resisting this huge mountain. Resistance would be futile. Not to mention a warrior spirit, even a warrior ascendant or warrior emperor would be crushed into shreds when facing such a huge mountain. A sky-splitting noise sounded as the huge mountain crushed onto the ground mercilessly. Li Ling Tian disappeared under the huge mountain like an ant. There was not a hint of a presence or sounds anymore from the mountain. Under the huge mountain, it was a totally different world. Li Ling Tian was now in a luxurious palace that had an ancient charm, yet its vicissitude and solemn atmosphere made him uncomfortable. Li Ling Tia spurted out some blood. The blow from the mountain just now was actually just an illusion, and then he ended up here mysteriously. In the palace, there was a shadow floating above the supreme throne. Its empty eyes were staring at Li Ling Tian. Facing those eyes, Li Ling Tian felt as if it could see through everything and nothing could be hidden from them. Such a strong spiritual force. Did this shadow lead me here? This seems unrealistic. Li Ling Tian was shocked. He could not care about the bloodstains on the corner of his mouth, his eyes were fixed upon that shadow without flinching. At this point, it was already too late for him to be afraid. You're not afraid of death? The shadow said calmly. It had a husky voice which was the same as the voice before. This had confirmed Li Lingjian's thought that it was this shadow that led him here. Afraid of death? What a joke. I've already died once, so it doesn't matter even if I die once more. You're definitely not afraid of death, because you've already died 3,000 times. Although you're a little trash, but at least you're confident. Do you want to become a supreme existence? The shadow's eyes continued staring at Li Ling Tian. To a warrior, what it said was definitely tempting. Who would not want to become a supreme existence? However, Li Ling Tian had to disappoint it as his face showed a trace of disdain. If you could become a supreme existence, then why are you still here? Li Ling Tian glanced at the shadow with disdain. He had already been a human for 2 lives, so he naturally understood the situation now. This shadow definitely had something to ask for. Li Ling Tian was not a 3-year-old child and would not be fooled. Even if he wanted to become a strong warrior, he could just rely on his own efforts. He would not need to give in to this shadow's temptation. I'll kill you. The shadow glanced at Li Ling Tian. After hearing his words, it was suddenly angered. At this point, Li Ling Tian felt as if death was close. Suddenly, Li Ling Tian was in an endless purgatory of blazing flames. The whole world was in flames. The bottomless flaming abyss in the fire dragon cave seemed insignificant when compared to here. I'm the 9 lives divine lord. If not for the immemorial ice crystal, I would have been the divine emperor. Now, I'll let you taste the power of the 9 yang sacred fire. Let's see how long your flaming sacred body can last and if you'll still be stubborn after this. The shadow said loudly. Although its voice sounded calm, it was not hard to realize its seething anger, while it looked at Li Ling Tian with eyes filled with rage. I have the flaming sacred body. Don't think that it'll be easy to bum me to death. F***CKU. Where the hell did you get the 9 yang sacred fire? 2, let me out of here. 2, Li Ling Tian scolded loudly. His whole body was almost roasted in this sea of flames. Even though he had been using both the sacred fire body and fire dragon's heart, he still could resist this mysterious flame. I myself am the 9 lives divine lord. Sigh, if not for the immemorial ice crystal, I would have definitely become the divine emperor in 300,000 years. Your flaming sacred body was actually mine, such a waste. I even fulfilled you before I turned into dust. The shadow said calmly with a husky and withered voice. It then reminisces the times when it was one of the most powerful beings in the divine realm who shocked the divine realm. It did not expect to be weakened by the immemorial ice crystal. Otherwise, it would have become a divine emperor-like existence. As time went by, Li Lingtian's clothes had all been burned and his body had turned into a ball of blazing fire. His eyes were also filled with a raging fire. Now, Li Lingtian had no skin, no bones and was just a man whose whole body was covered in flames. Immemorial ice crystal, refine. The pain on his body and even the mental pain had become completely numb to Li Lingtian. No one could imagine the pain that he was suffering. Li Lingtian, who had the flaming sacred body, was now utterly covered in flames. However, within the blazing flames, a deep blue ice crystal was constantly resisting the flames from refining. The fire dragon's heart had long been melted away by the flames. The fire dragon's heart was only the essence of a fire dragon. Although it was powerful, it was nothing compared to this so-called nine-yang sacred fire. Yes, that's it. As long as you can refine the immemorial ice crystal, you would have a promising future. The shadow stared at Li Lingtian constantly. Seeing the immemorial ice crystal in Li Lingtian's body, it was not sure whether it was angry or excited. However, when Li Lingtian screamed, it could not help but feel excited. Boom! 2, boom! 2. Within the flames, the immemorial ice crystal continued to resist the nine-yang sacred fire from refining. After some time, there was finally a loud explosion, and the immemorial ice crystal turned into pieces as it melted into the nine-yang sacred fire. Suddenly, the nine-yang sacred fire weakened, as if it was going to disappear any time. Yet at this moment, the nine-yang sacred fire became a mixture of red and blue as the immemorial ice crystal melted. Its color could not be differentiated. Chapter 43, Chapter 43, Nine-yang Sacred Lord of the Past Life. Chapter 43, Nine-yang Sacred Lord of the Past Life. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Wham! The integration of the immemorial ice crystal and nine-yang sacred fire produced a terrifying chi. As the two extremes came into blows, the flame blew up even more. It was as if oil was poured on top of a fire. However, the flame, which carried an element of extreme chill, could not be differentiated as flame or frost. The flame released a chilling sensation, yet it was not frost, because this ice was burning at the same time. Success. Tvi finally succeeded. There you have it, the coexistence of ice and fire, for you. I am finally reborn after 3,000 reincarnations. My disappearance will accomplish my future. Tremble at my feet, world. The surreal figure let out a deranged laugh while it looked at the flame. In a flash, the surreal figure transformed into a streak of flames before it disappeared into the frigid flame beside Li Lingtian. Suddenly, Li Lingtian received shocking information from his brain and he became afraid. Although this surreal figure was only a phantom without an entity, it was all-powerful. Li Lingtian would not stand a chance to resist if it were to seize and house his body. However, he could not wrap his head around the fact that this surreal figure had disappeared in perpetuity and left behind only information that was transferred straight to his mind. Retrieve. Retrieve. I said, retrieve. Nevertheless, this situation was out of his hands at this point. He was without a body and was nothing but a ball of flame. He had to absorb the frigid flame to reconstruct his body. Swish swish, swish swish. With the wind howling in the background, Li Lingtian's flaming frame gradually evolved into an entity. He looked no different from before, but he seemed easier on the eyes. Dressed in satin skin that even a woman would be envious of, his outer flesh was without a flaw while inside his body rested an endless flaming chi. I am a powerhouse of the upper world, also known as Nine-yang Sacred Lord. During my cultivation, the descending immemorial ice crystal had crippled my cultivation level. I unleashed a forbidden spell to create this dimension as I diminished to nothing. I then worked out the absolute sacred technique that allowed ice and fire to coexist. The heaven and earth reincarnation of heaven's scriptures has been passed down since ancient times, so please proceed with caution. Not only are you a third of my soul, but the flaming sacred body of this divine martial continent also constitutes a third of my soul. 3,000 reincarnations have passed and this will be the last. The entire divine martial continent would have disappeared if you didn't show up. With 3,000 reincarnations gone, I'm slowly losing my memory. Everything now rests in your hands. I am Nine-yang Sacred Lord and you are my reincarnation. Don't embarrass us. The inner vital of the Pseudo Dragon Beast is one of the keys to opening the Divine Dragon Palace. Keep safe. As rows of information played in his mind, his head became clearer and sharper than before. It took half an hour before Li Lingtian opened his eyes. He finally understood all that had happened. He, in the 21st century, was 1/3 of the soul, while the Li Ling Tian in Divine Martial Continent was also 1/3 of the soul. Together with the surreal figure's soul, he was now one complete soul. So I'm the reincarnation of Nine Yang's Sacred Lord. I am Nine Yang's Sacred Lord, Li Ling Tian murmured under his breath. Everything, including the palace, then vanished before his eyes, leaving only darkness behind. There really is a god in this world and I am one of them. Li Ling Tian examined his body and soon found himself at a loss for words. He started to look around everywhere. He was disappointed. The heaven and earth conflagration under the Nine Yang's sacred fire could even melt the powerful Onyx equipment, Imperial equipment, and divine equipment, let alone a storage sack. *CK this, it's a lost cause. Do I have to run naked? Li Ling Tian took a look around and realized that the flaming world in which he had experienced before was only 10,000 square feet in size. The ground was pitch black, without a speck of dust. Needless to say, his storage sack was nowhere in sight. Putting the medicinal supply, inner vitals, or the cloud's startling sword, a peerless spiritual equipment aside, he should be left with a set of clothes at least. Instead, he was stark naked from head to toe, without a single hair on his body. Even if he unleashed Ice Vitality Divine Fist and Flaming Divine Fist to take care of some low-level warriors, he could not possibly go into battle bare. I've advanced to another tier. I'm a tier 4 warrior spirit now. As he sensed the changes within him, Li Ling Tian discovered that he had reached tier 4 in warrior spirit state. Moreover, the energy in his body was purer by multiple folds. Flaming Divine Fist. Bam! With Flaming Divine Fist at his fingertips, he pulled a punch. A 3-yard-length Flaming Divine Fist was suddenly slammed onto the ground, exploding the ground into a huge dark pit. Conception. The Flaming Divine Fist has been unleashed to a conception-like degree. There were no words to describe the shock he was in. He had climbed up a tier after going through a state of nirvana which gave him better control of his flaming skills. His Flaming Divine Fist had reached Conception, the legendary Conception. Ice Vitality Divine Fist, 300-mile frost. Swoosh! A sparkling and translucent glacier extended within the 1,000-yard radius. As Li Ling Tian stood within this glacier, he could sense its terrifying force. Following a punch, the glacier was crushed into bits like a shattered mirror. With the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart finally in the clear and integrated into his body, he saw an increase in his ability as well as a more domineering constitution. First things first, I should get out of here. He lay out a plan at that thought. He could look for a person or two once he got out and freeze his opponent with a strike of Ice Vitality Divine Fist. His problem would then be solved by seizing the victim's storage sack and clothes. Li Ling Tian searched around the palace but he could not find an exit because a mountain was over it. Well, I'll be a pangolin for once. With a mountain on top in mind, Li Ling Tian had to dig a tunnel out of there. Once he detected a direction, Li Ling Tian smashed a fist of heaven falls earth rends and the palace was suddenly in shambles. Using both his hands, he then began to dig out a tunnel way. Time went on day by day and if he had to put his finger on it, he could have been excavating for 2 weeks. In other words, a month had passed in Hidden Dragon Isle. Outside the mountain, a chain of explosions ensued. Qin Feng, hand over the Onyx equipment, purple-green sword and I'll spare your life, a tier 9 warrior spirit young man exclaimed. With a premium spiritual equipment that flickered with ferocious chi in his hand, the young man darted a cold stare at the youth before him. Yang Hao, who the hell do you think you are? I'm holding a mediocre Onyx equipment right here, come take it if you can. Qin Feng sneered in response. A mediocre Onyx equipment itself was a revering existence. Many warrior spirit powerhouses did not even possess a spiritual equipment, yet he had managed to uncover an Onyx equipment. Although it was only a mediocre Onyx equipment, it still bore greater strength than a peerless spiritual equipment. As there were also 7 to 8 tier 3 and 4 warrior spirits eyeing him covetously from afar, he found himself in a tight spot. Then die. The Onyx equipment will be ours once you're dead. Strike now. At the wave of Yang Hao's arm, all the warriors made their move. For the sake of an Onyx equipment, they struck an attack towards Qin Feng, and at that moment, the earth began to shake. Ah! Why the F***ck did you hit me? Ah! Following the sounds of shrieking wails, Qin Feng exterminated them one after another. It was unknown who had the storage sack at this point, but whoever was in possession of it was bound to be hit with the most powerful attack. In that brief moment, only 3 out of the 20 warrior spirits were left on the scene. 1 tier 7 and 2 tier 9 warrior spirits. Yang Hao, I know where you stand in strength. Hand over the purple-green sword and both of us will spare your life. Zhou Tian turned his gaze to Yang Hao while he sent a signal to his junior brother beside him. There was no issue in taking down Yang Hao if the two of them joined forces. With the trio engaging in a two-pronged attack, a major battle was forthcoming. Senior sister, who do you think will end up with the purple-green sword? In the distance, 3 women watched the fight for the Onyx equipment in the mountain. However, even after the deaths of multiple warriors, they showed no signs of making a move. Yiyi, none of them will get their hands on the Onyx equipment, it belongs to our Misty Pavilion. With her eyes fixated afar, Zhou Qingqing laughed playfully. She would make her strike once the trio had sustained injury. She was originally a tier 9 peak warrior spirit, but she had managed to break through to tier 1 warrior king a month after her entry. Bam! Wham! Tui! Tui! Ah! The moment the trio engaged in a huge battle, the tier 7 warrior spirit met his fate while the 2 tier 9 warrior spirits spat out blood simultaneously. Both of them had sustained severe injury. Senior sister, do we jump in now? Wait a minute, it'll be easier later. With 1 warrior spirit down and 2 deeply wounded, Zhou Qingqing knew the remaining 2 would breathe their last if she were to wait a little longer. Phew! Just on the mountainside, Tian took in the breath of fresh air. He was finally out after digging through a tunnel for 2 weeks. Chapter 44, Embarrassed. Chapter 44, Embarrassed. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Someone's in battle. Oh B***ger, are they tired of living? Tian turned his gaze to the 2 wounded warriors whose lives were hanging by a thread. He was overjoyed to be in such circumstances as he could simply eliminate those 2 warriors and take their clothes off them. Zhou Tian, I'll be leaving first. Having said that, a jade slip appeared the moment Yang Hao extended his arm. The jade slip was clouded in spiritual qi. Major maneuver spell. Major maneuver spell. Zhou Tian gasped in surprise. At the same time but at a distance away, Zhou Qingqing too cried out with a face of regret. This major maneuver spell was capable of shifting a person to a great distance, and if so, he could no longer be pursued. Although Tian was equally shocked, this major maneuver spell intrigued him. With that, he circulated his body of true qi to unleash his Ice Vitality Divine Fist. Ice Vitality Divine Fist, 300-mile frost. After letting out a gentle shout, a glacier emerged within a 1,000-yard radius at the flicker of his body. Yang Hao and Zhou Tian were now trapped in this glacier, frozen stiff as ice sculptures. Even though Yang Hao was on the verge of unleashing the major maneuver spell, fear was cemented on his face. Shameless. The 3 women afar were shocked that a powerful master was lurking amongst them there. Even as a warrior king, Zhou Qingqing's divine mindfulness could not detect him. However, the 3 women's faces soon flushed red as a naked young man appeared out of thin air and submerged into the glacier. Clang! The glacier shattered to pieces at the sound of a huge explosion. With Yang Hao and Zhou Tian gone, Tian quickly found a set of clothes and wore it on his body. F***ck me, this is very embarrassing. Tian's expression hardened after he put on some clothes because he realized that 3 women were peering from a distance. They must have seen him in his birthday suit. His reputation was now ruined. Ruined. As soon as he said that, Li Lingtian cleared many warriors' storage sacks in a hurry. Since he was poverty-stricken and did not have a penny to his name, he was not one to waste these storage sacks. "Senior sister, I don't want the Onyx equipment anymore. Let's go," a gorgeous woman beside Zhou Qingqing said before looking the other way. She did not have the nerve to gaze afar. Could that young man have a weird fetish in fighting without clothes? What a pity, he seemed to be a lovely man. He's only a tier 4 warrior spirit. Wait for me, I'll retrieve the Onyx equipment. Zhou Qingqing too was blushing, but she forced the image to the back of her mind at the thought of the Onyx equipment. Judging by the looks of her junior sister, she knew she was feeling shy. "Senior sister, let it be. He's junior brother Li Lingtian from Sky Dragon Empire," Luyi muttered in a soft voice. Her face turned boiling hot when she connected the dots between this junior brother to the memory of both of them spending a night in a cave. Sky Cloud Sex Li Lingtian. Zhou Qingqing and the other junior sister cried out in alarm. Before entering the Hidden Dragon Isle, Li Lingtian was persuaded to take apprenticeship under a warrior ascendant, and he had even competed against the same warrior ascendant in a battle of flaming forces. Swoosh! As a piercing sound cut through the air, a figure appeared before the trio. With fears written all over their faces, the trio took a step back in unison. Even Zhou Qingqing, who was a warrior king, fell back a step. This young man had fought unnatural. If the circumstances were the same, they would not be able to face him. "Senior sisters." Deep down, Li Lingtian smiled bitterly as his earlier actions were exposed to these three young girls. If he were to leave right away, news of him tending to run around naked would spread like wildfire. "Shameless," the trio exclaimed. Li Lingtian was taken aback. He had quite a luck in finding himself in these situations. "Senior sisters, you've misunderstood. I came across some issues during cultivation and my storage sack was burned to dust. Do you think I like to have it this way?" Li Lingtian pointed at his apparel. It was obvious that the clothes were one size larger and did not fit him. He did not even have any usable weapons on him. "Ha! Junior brother Li, your cultivation. I see." After spending a night with Li Lingtian, Luyi realized that he was not as deplorable as she had imagined. Taking another glance at Li Lingtian's cultivation level, she could not help but believe his words due to his advancement from Tier 1 to Tier 4 warrior spirit state. Luyi chuckled, putting Li Lingtian in an awkward position. "Senior sister, junior brother Li's right. He cultivates fire path techniques. I've personally witnessed junior brother Li breaking through a while ago and now he's a Tier 4 warrior spirit. Something must have happened during his cultivation." Pleased to find Li Lingtian embarrassed, Luyi then turned to explain to Zhou Qingqing. Zhou Qingqing could tell that something strange was going on with Li Lingtian's clothes. Besides, his clothes did not fit him. For a moment, the three women burst into giggles while Li Lingtian stood there blankly, not knowing whether he should lash out. "If there's nothing else, I shall take my leave now," Li Lingtian spoke before he turned around in an attempt to leave. However, he was called back by Zhou Qingqing. "Junior brother Li, where do you plan on going?" Zhou Qingqing asked in a sweet voice. The more allies they had in Hidden Dragon Isle, the stronger the forces. Although the treasures divided would be less, they would feel much safer. "It's still early, so I'm going to take a stroll around, or else my trip here will be in vain." Li Lingtian spread his palms out helplessly. Since he had lost everything, he had to venture out in search of treasures or he would suffer double losses. There appears to be a strange phenomenon happening in Hidden Dragon Isle. Some treasures might have emerged. Why don't we join forces? Zhou Qingqing gave out a faint smile. Considering that the trio's combined strength was not enough and they required new blood, Li Lingtian made a great choice. "Hehe, 1 foot 11 inches be leaving. I can't face you after you've seen me naked." With that, Li Lingtian circulated his breeze technique, and before the trio could say anything more, he had disappeared into the forest. "This guy." Gazing at the direction Li Lingtian left in, Luyi felt a sense of loss. However, the thought of Li Ling Tian in a fix left her bursting out in laughter. Li Ling Tian launched his breeze technique to its summit. In a second, he was already dozens of miles away. The phenomenon Zhou Qingqing was referring to was most likely Divine Dragon Palace. The way Nine Yang's Sacred Lord described Divine Dragon Palace made it sound like it was dangerous, but what he really meant was that there were treasures in there too. The 4th tier Pseudo-Dragon Beast's inner vital was key to enter Divine Dragon Palace. Hence, his priority was to find the Prince of Tianjin Empire who possessed the Pseudo-Dragon Beast. Subduing the Pseudo-Dragon Beast was out of the question, but killing the beast was possible by teaming up with more warriors. Now that he was out, there was still a lot on the list to take care of before he could advance to Divine Dragon Palace. Otherwise, he would meet his end if he were to confront that many super powerhouses there. The sky gradually darkened as he dashed through hundreds of yards. So, Li Ling Tian sought out a concealed cave and took shelter in it before sitting in meditation for a rest. Who would have thought? Sitting with his legs crossed, Li Ling Tian still found it bizarre as his mind played back the events from a few days ago. He had somehow transmigrated over and realized that he was only a soul. After 3,000 reincarnations, he would have disappeared from the face of the earth if the 3 souls did not meet. He would probably have suffered a violent death in his former 21st century past, hence he thanked his lucky stars that the souls merged in time. The only downside was that all of his memories were missing. All that was left were his memory of his 21st century past and this life. However, it was all good. He could kickstart his life anew. With the heaven and earth reincarnation from the heaven scriptures, his flaming sacred body, ice vitality warrior soul, and the souls of 3, alongside his 21st century wisdom, he could simply pick himself back up. Now, I should straighten up. Although I have the 9 Yang sacred fire, as well as the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart taken care of, I have yet to adjust to it, Li Ling Tian mumbled to himself. With that, he began to cultivate with full energy. The immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart were no longer of concern. Now that he was a tier 4 warrior spirit equipped with the ever-omnipotent ice vitality warrior soul and flaming sacred body, he was no longer at risk amid warrior spirit powerhouses. He mainly had to watch out for warrior king masters. Nevertheless, his ice vitality divine fist and flaming divine fist had made great strides. They released a powerful drive upon eruption, deserving the title as one of his killer moves. Chapter 45, Divine Dragon Palace. Chapter 45, Divine Dragon Palace. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Those who could operate an airship in Hidden Dragon Isle were not one to mess with. It's His Highness the Second Prince. Yao Tianxiong frowned at the sight of the airship. The arrival of more powerhouses here would turn up the heat in the competition. With Tian Wuji joining in, it would be more challenging to contend. Although they were super geniuses of Tianjin Empire, they dared not cross the line with Tianjin Empire's prince. Yao Tianxiong, Zhou Tianjiao, you guys are one step ahead of me. How is it? Report the situation to me. With an air of haughtiness, Tian Wuji stared down at Yao Tianxiong's group in a commanding position as though he was a king on high. Assuming such a posture made many powerhouses displeased with him. We just got here so we don't really know, Zhou Tianjiao faintly replied as he hid his displeasure within. Even though he was unhappy, it was not the time nor place to act out his emotions. No one in Tianjin Empire was bold enough to defy the empire that housed countless powerhouses. Oh, you don't know. You, explain the situation. Tian Wuji turned his gaze to another powerhouse. The faces of warriors beneath hardened at his demanding tone, spurring a heavy atmosphere that could be cut through with a knife. F***CKU, Tian Wuji, get your *SS down here. I'll whack you until your mother can't recognize you. You're only a forsaken son who has no power in Tianjin Empire. How dare you throw your weight about in front of me? Bei Ao of the Southern Empire's 10,000 Demons sect ran his mouth out loud. As a favored son of the Southern Empire, he would not be treated as a servant. Tianjin Empire's powerhouses may be afraid of stepping on Tian Wuji's toes, but that did not include the warriors of the Southern Empire. Die! Tian Wuji was stunned, but his face was quickly clouded with animosity. As a killing intent flashed past his eyes, Tian Wuji raised his arm without warning and slammed a peerless spiritual equipment towards Baiyao. Many warriors were in dismay as the atmosphere quivered as though it was about to tear apart. The strike of a warrior king was indeed revering. Tian Wuji had the tolerance for many things, but saying that he was not in power was his sore spot. Sure, out of the numerous princes in Tianjin Empire, he was only a forsaken son, but opening up his old wounds flipped his lid. Heavenly demon's body, break. Baiyao looked towards the warrior king's peerless spiritual equipment with eyes of disdain. Circulating his true chi, Bei Qi turned into a 30-foot-tall demonic beast at the explosion of great demonic energy. The huge body and sturdy defense left quite a visual impact. Bam! A giant fist violently crashed onto Tian Wuji's attack. When the explosion sounded, the two attacks disappeared into a burst of forces in the air. Based on that one move, the duo's abilities were on par with one another. The attack from warrior kings left countless warrior spirits shaking in the knees. Humph, watch your back. Although he failed in his attempt, Tian Wuji did not intend to continue the battle. Plenty of powerhouses were present and his purpose was to search for treasure. Attaining this treasure would allow him to rise in power and gain control of Tianjin Empire. Swish, swish. No one uttered another word after the battle between two warrior kings had ended. From time to time, whistling noises passed through the sky as numerous powerhouses bolted over. Those who were able to make it here were warrior spirit powerhouses and disciples of supersects. There were also many warrior kings. Krung. An omnipotent energy soared skyward from the peaceful lake, which caused the entire lake to tremble and oppressed over 1,000 powerhouses. This is the 8th time. This astounding energy exploded in the air before it gradually disappeared. A multitude of warriors started to engage in a discussion. This energy shock had been ongoing for the 8th time and it came up once every 2 to 3 days. This phenomenon confirmed many powerhouses' belief that an amazing treasure was present. It's the 8th time. It should come up again one more time before Divine Dragon Palace opens. I'm lucky that I made it in time. Li Tian quickly unleashed his motion skill before he soon arrived at a spot near the lake. As he looked at the lake, he was in shock to find that many warriors were gathered there. The number of warriors amassed surpassed 1,000, and each of them was at least a tier 5 or 6 warrior spirit. Not to mention, there were also 9 warrior king powerhouses there. A while back, Li Tian had flown northwest in search of Divine Dragon Palace after taking a break. While on the way, he encountered several top geniuses who also took flight in the same direction. Based on his experience, he was right on the money in terms of direction. He had eliminated demonic beasts and slaughtered blundering warrior spirits along the way. I wonder what treasure is hidden in Divine Dragon Palace. Even Nine-Yang Sacred Lord took it to heart, Li Tian mumbled to himself with smiling eyes. From where he was, he spotted disciples from Misty Pavilion, Green Jade Sect, Sky Cloud Sect, and Radiant Sect. The warriors from Sky Dragon Empire were, no doubt, fewer amid these masters. Even Radiant Sect and Green Jade Sect were second-rates compared to other empires. After making a note of all the powerful warriors, Li Tian sought out a hidden spot to meditate and rest. The Divine Dragon Palace should make an appearance when the next sign presented itself. The wait was 3 days. 3 days had passed before the calm lake churned in turbulence. Wham! Whoosh! An impressive energy soared in the sky. This time, the entire hidden dragon isle shook as the lake waters towered sky-high following the energy. Many nearby warriors were swept into the lake waters, and in the blink of an eye, the mighty water pillar took the lives of these warrior spirits. Aghast, the remaining warriors withdrew to a distance in a hurry. This energy was stronger than the former 8 times. With this, Li Tian opened his eyes that were twinkling in excitement. The astonishing energy had blown up the lake and it uncovered a silvery radiance in the center. Although the radiance was the size of 10 feet, it grew more brilliant by the second. Soon, the 10-foot-tall silvery radiance had expanded to 1,000 feet in circumference. In fact, it was not a radiance but a silver palace. This silver palace of 100 yards in height towered amid the lake. Given its silver exterior, it was unknown what was used to construct the palace. The palace had a pitch-black gate that was about 30 feet tall and 15 feet wide. Divine Dragon Palace has appeared. Divine Dragon Palace finally made its appearance. Silence. Everybody, think of a way to open the gate. Let's join forces, or else our wait for a century would go to waste. Many warriors bubbled over with excitement. After all, they were here, on Hidden Dragon Isle that only opened once every century, for Divine Dragon Palace. Now that Divine Dragon Palace was within reach, they had to figure out a way to get in. Wham! It was only 10 minutes later that the soaring energy and churning lake surface resumed its peacefulness. However, a demonic energy spread about as if a bomb was detonated in the air. The demonic energy had a crushing effect on countless warriors. With that said, powerhouses who were inferior to Tier 5 warrior spirits were immediately crushed to death. Appalled, the remaining warriors quickly pulled away to a distance, but to their disappointment, they found that it was impossible to make a dash outside 3 miles. What a terrifying demonic energy! This is the repression of an almighty demonic master. Hiss! Many surviving warriors stared at the repression in the air with pale faces. This repression of such omnipotent demonic energy was difficult to fend off from the outside, let alone inside Divine Dragon Palace. It's so powerful that the weak who are lower than a Tier 5 warrior spirit would be crushed to death. Under the oppression of this repression, Tian was too forced to withdraw from his cultivation. He stared at the repression in shock. This repression was almost substantial, taking the form of a heavy mist. However, the heaven and earth reincarnation in his body, as well as his powerful flaming sacred body, were unaffected by this repression. With the immemorial ice crystal and fire dragon's heart dissolved in his body, his improved constitution built up resistance towards the repression. Within his vision, he could only see 30-odd Tier 9 peak imperfection warrior spirits, 17 warrior kings, and 10-odd masters who were equipped with treasures left by the lake. Sigh. Tian could only sigh at the deaths of low-level warriors from Sky Cloud sect and other sects in Sky Dragon Empire. With the majority under Tier 5 warrior spirits crushed to death, there were only a handful of warriors who were left. At the lakeside, the 60-odd supermasters stared solemnly at Divine Dragon Palace. These masters would be the strongest existence to enter Hidden Dragon Isle. Chapter 46, Onyx Equipment, Purple-Green Sword. Chapter 46, Onyx Equipment, Purple-Green Sword. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. These are all garbage. After cultivating, Tian opened the storage sacks he collected and began to make an inventory of his gain. The contents were mostly lousy pills and weapons, but there he had also found a century and 5-year-old medicinal supply along with some demonic beasts' inner vitals in there. He was no longer swayed by spiritual stones and such because he was in need of a convenient weapon. Having lost the cloud-startling sword, sky-perishing spear, and the pill tripod for pill refinery, he was now left empty-handed. Ha! What a strong spiritual chi fluctuation! An exquisite tiny sword appeared before his eyes. Assuming a blend of purple and green color, this tiny sword released a heavy spiritual chi and an oppressive force rushed toward Tian. Mediocre onyx equipment, purple-green sword. The moment his divine mindfulness forced its way into the blade, Tian received information that this weapon was an onyx equipment called purple-green sword. He could not believe that it was an onyx equipment. Who would have thought that after losing a peerless spiritual equipment, he would gain an onyx equipment in turn? A mediocre onyx equipment fared significantly better in strength compared to the spiritual equipment. Tian burst out laughing. This made his trip to Hidden Dragon Isle worthwhile even if he were to return with empty pockets. Not to mention, he now had a mediocre onyx equipment in hand. With this Onyx equipment, the force driven by the astounding sword technique's first form, Bright Moon in Soft Breeze, would be more powerful than Vast Obscure Extermination. Purple-green sword, refine. Following a yell, Tian gestured a few motions before he shot out a curl of his fresh blood. His blood essence then formed a bloody screen that swiftly wrapped around the purple-green sword. With this, the purple-green sword struggled to get out of the wrapper. Nevertheless, the struggle was futile in the face of Tian's amazing soul and divine mindfulness. Even a warrior king could not stack up against his divine mindfulness. Since Nine Yang's sacred lord's surreal figure was sustained by his soul and divine mindfulness, one could well imagine how powerful his divine mindfulness was. Even if Tian did not inherit much of it, warrior kings were still no match to him. Swoosh! 10 minutes later, the refining of the purple-green sword was a success. Tian extended his arm to grab a hold of the sword whilst circulating his body of true qi. Immediately, the purple-green sword enlarged to a yard in length and released a heavy stench of repression. This was the repression of a weapon, the repression of an Onyx equipment. The repression released from this Onyx equipment is capable of restraining Tier 2 warrior spirits and below. Tian was ecstatic over this omnipotent repression. He could even sense the fluctuating repression coming from the purple-green sword with just a gentle swing of his arm. His confidence instantly inflated. Astounding sword technique, Bright Moon in Soft Breeze. Astounding sword technique, Vast Obscure Extermination. Astounding sword technique, Thousand Shadows of Fluttering Flowers. Swish swish, swish swish. Clang, clang. Unable to stifle his confidence, he left the cave in a flash and brought his astounding sword technique to full play. He had already mastered the first two forms, but it had never crossed his mind that he could spontaneously demonstrate the third form after demonstrating the preceding moves. It was hard not to rejoice over the fact that after multiple failed attempts, he had eventually cultivated the third form. As blade auras crisscrossed in the air, a mass of weaving blade shadows and auras ripped the atmosphere to shreds. He was more in shock to find that the atmosphere was shattering like a mirror. The air within a 10-yard radius was like pieces of broken mirror, and Tian's mind was blown at the magnificent display of force. So this is the Thousand Shadows of Fluttering Flowers. Tian was in awe at the presence of the shattered dimension. With an Onyx equipment demonstrating the Thousand Shadows of Fluttering Flowers, the warrior king powerhouses will be dead, thought. The confident smile deepened on his face. The Onyx equipment itself was powerful, but when matched with great skill, nobody would be able to fend off the move. Heaven falls, earth rends. Bam! After storing his purple-green sword, he circulated his body of true qi before he smashed his fist onto the ground. With Tian as the center, the ground shook and exploded into multiple cracks. The ground was flipped upside down within a 100-yard radius. Ice Vitality Divine Fist. Hold. At this moment, the shattered dimension and chaos on Earth immediately froze inside a 10,000 square feet glacier. Flaming Divine Fist. Conception. Clang. Once the Flaming Divine Fist had reached conception, it was no longer an Amber Tier inferior skill. A skill of this level could not be measured as it was neither an Amber Tier nor Onyx Tier. However, it was definitely stronger than the Amber Tier and a regular Onyx Tier, since the degree of force had reached that of an Onyx Tier superior skill. It was unimaginable for the Flaming Divine Fist to put an end to the Ice Vitality Divine Fist under normal circumstances. Nevertheless, succeeding in conception would see the glacier resolved in a single fist. This was also all part of Tian's plan. Otherwise, even an Earth Tier skill, let alone an Amber Tier skill, would not be able to abolish the glacier formed by his immemorial ice crystal. Heaven and Earth Conflagration. With the glacier gone, the Earth resumed its peace while the dimension stabilized. However, it was at this moment when the temperature that surrounded Tian rose steeply within the range of 100 yards, reducing everything to ashes. As palm print after palm print was unleashed, a sea of fire emerged before it seared the forest within a 100-yard radius to nothing. With the ground set on fire as well, the land melted into lava. Raging flames towered to a height of 100 yards in the sky. Standing amid the flames, Li Ling Tian was the master in control, and a confident smile slipped past his lips. Retrieve. At a wave of his arms, the flames disappeared into his body in the blink of an eye. The endless flow of spiritual qi in the surrounding was quickly absorbed. Tier 5 Warrior Spirit, Breakthrough. The spiritual qi between heaven and earth formed a vacuum after it burned up in flames. As Li Ling Tian retrieved the flames, he too absorbed the spiritual qi at an insane rate. He then circulated the heaven and earth reincarnation in his body to convert this endless flow of spiritual qi to true qi. Once the true qi reached the pinnacle of Tier 4, it was the moment of breakthrough. Hence, the powerful true qi made a quantum leap past Tier 4 to Tier 5 Warrior Spirit state. Just as his true qi depleted, he had achieved the peak of Tier 5 Warrior Spirit state. Hidden Dragon Isle was boundless and vast. No one knew exactly how huge it was. Hundreds of centuries had passed in Hidden Dragon Isle, but no one had been able to uncover the isle in its entirety. Although 10,000 warriors scrambled in when it opened once every 100 years, not many medicinal supplies and demonic beasts were brought out. On the contrary, the quality of the herbs became better over the years and the demonic beasts had grown stronger. Second-tier demonic beasts roamed everywhere while third-tier demonic beasts were a common sight. Around a usually quiet lake of 30 miles in size, gathered several hundred great warriors. These warriors were at least a Tier 6 or 7 warrior spirit. There were also many Tier 9 warrior spirits and a handful of warrior kings. Yao Qianxiong, so you're saying that Divine Dragon Palace is here? Zhou Tianjiao gazed at the 30-mile-sized lake. With no hint of activity, it was peaceful and quiet at the lake. He was puzzled at the absence of Divine Dragon Palace. That's right. Look at how the 4 mountains surrounding this lake and the size of this lake, doesn't it resemble the map? Are you doubting the sect leader? Taking a look around with a watchful eye, Yao Tianxiong answered with confidence before he turned his gaze to Zhou Tianjiao and other warriors. He darted a sharp stare at Zhou Tianjiao. Sect leader Nangong would not become a warrior emperor had he not entered Hidden Dragon Isle the last time. There should be a number of people who are aware of Divine Dragon Palace's location. Look at them, bursting with confidence, Zhou Tianjiao replied without a care in the world. Many knew of Divine Palace in Hidden Dragon Isle, but none had gained access to the palace before. The real treasure of Hidden Dragon Isle was inside Divine Dragon Palace. Since they could not infiltrate the palace, they could only search the perimeters for medicinal supply while they faced the attacks of high-level demonic beasts. Both of them were warrior kings, super geniuses of the Tian Jin Empire, who had become warrior king powerhouses before the age of 30. While the duo was in conversation, countless warriors by the lake felt a throb that stirred a discussion amongst them. As they looked up to the sky, they saw a large airship approaching in a swoosh. Chapter 47, Killing a Warrior King. Chapter 47, Killing a Warrior King. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Is there anyone who would like to enter Divine Dragon Palace? If you wish to gain access into Divine Dragon Palace, we should open the gate together. Don't even dream about taking advantage. Take your pick between opening Divine Dragon Palace's gate or get lost, or else. In a flash, Tian Wuji slapped a magical spell on his body and he was immediately suspended in the air. Darting a sharp gaze around, Tian Wuji shouted. That's right, we should team up to open Divine Dragon Palace's gate to get inside or leave us be. Yao Qianxiong too stood up. As a warrior of Tian Jin Empire, even if he did not see eye to eye with Tian Wuji, the second prince, he should not bring shame to Tian Jin Empire. For a moment, 6 warrior kings of Tian Jin Empire stood up, followed by warrior kings of the Southern Empire and Northern Dusk Empire. Warriors of every empire stood behind the warrior kings. They were either Tier 9 peak in perfection warrior spirits or those in possession of treasures. Sky Dragon Empire, are you the only one this time? Soon, masters of 4 empires split up. The representatives of the 4 mysterious superclans, Duanmu, Shengwan, Dongfang, and Baiming were all warrior king powerhouses. However, as part of the Eastern Spirit Greenland's 4 great empires, Sky Dragon Empire only had Zhou Qingqing, a woman, as a warrior king. Behind her stood 6 Tier 9 warrior spirits, and one of them was Dongfang Qingyu. The masters snickered at Sky Dragon Empire's talents. In this dog-eat-dog world, and as Sky Dragon Empire's super sect, not a single super disciple at the level of a warrior king was in sight. "It's only me. Any objections?" Zhou Qingqing's expression hardened. She was a genius disciple who represented Sky Dragon Empire at this time and place. In fact, there were only 8 of them from Sky Dragon Empire, while the other empires had dozens of survivors, including 7 to 8 warrior kings at least. The threats from Tian Wuji and Yao Tianxiong brought forward gifted warriors, who wished to enter Divine Dragon Palace, to the lakeside. There were about 300 of them. No objections. However, if Sky Dragon Empire wants to gain access to Divine Dragon Palace, you're only entitled to a limited amount of resources inside, Southern Empire's Bei Ao blurted coldly. Although nobody was aware of the number of treasures inside, it would be strange not to take advantage of the weak Sky Dragon Empire by setting a limit. Haha, that's right. You're the only ones from Sky Dragon Empire. You won't be enough to pave the way for us. Sky Dragon Empire is really going downhill. I think it's better if you merge into our 3 great empires. There are no geniuses in Sky Dragon Empire, only trash. It seems like it will be the end of Sky Dragon Empire after this. 2. The super geniuses by the lakeside roared with laughter, leaving Zhou Qingqing's team in rage. Nevertheless, it was not the right place or time to step on these people's toes. No one from the outside would know if they were to face massacre here. Hundreds and thousands of warriors afar joined in mocking Sky Dragon Empire, but no one from Sky Dragon Empire dared to voice out. In the law of the jungle, retaliation without the ability to fight back was a surefire road to hell. You're not saying a word, so I take that you agree to it, Tian Wuji commented arrogantly. Now, Tianjin Empire had one less rival. Sky Dragon Empire could simply be disregarded. Tian Wuji, don't cross the line. Red and blue in the face, Dongfang Qingyu's body quivered. He was on the verge of running amok. Hot, Dongfang Qingyu, as a Tier 6 warrior spirit, you sure have the balls to butt in. I'll let you rest eternally if you don't shut up. Darting a stare at Dongfang Qingyu, Bei Ao surged his body vigor and sent his powerful demonic energy to press down onto Dongfang Qingyu's chest. Tui! Dongfang Qingyu spat a mouthful of blood before he collapsed to the ground. His face was as white as a sheet. 10,000 demons sex warriors were feeling right at home amidst this astounding demonic energy. Caught in a fortuitous opportunity, this warrior king powerhouse had struck his repression and wounded Dongfang Qingyu. Bei Ao, kneel before me. A faint voice was heard. Although the tones sounded indolent, many warriors were dumbfounded at such an occasion. Bei Ao was a warrior king, a Tier 2 warrior king. Moreover, the repression coming from the demonic energy had further pushed his Tier 2 warrior king state to Tier 3. With these few empires and mysterious clans occupying the lakeside, who would dare challenge a warrior king? Following the statement, a youth in white emerged within everyone's sight and they were taken aback. Without taking any measures, a Tier 5 warrior spirit eased his way into the demonic energy's repression and had the guts to provoke Bei Ao, a warrior king. Junior Brotherly. Junior Brotherly. It's him. Junior Brotherly, get out. Many of whom recognized Li Lingtian were taken by surprise. Realizing that it was Li Lingtian, Dongfang Qingyu immediately told him to leave, knowing that he would not survive against these warrior kings. Don't even think about escaping. Your only choice is to leave this place dead for trying my patience, Bei Ao exclaimed with a dirty look on his face. How could a Tier 5 warrior spirit trash command him to get down on his knees? Moreover, Li Lingtian had insulted him in front of so many super geniuses. I told you to kneel. Are you Motherf King deaf or dumb? Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? Li Lingtian trod step by step ahead until he reached the lakeside. His cold eyes were fixated on Bei Ao. He deserved death for harming a Sky Cloud sect disciple. He would not be bothered if it were anything else. However, bounds were overstepped when the empires of Eastern Spirit Greenland made a mockery out of Sky Dragon Empire. A powerhouse would never turn his back on his motherland. As a young man of the 21st century, even though he was without cash, looks, or love, he was patriotic. No shame should be put upon weaker nations. This was a matter of principle. Regardless of the circumstance, he would not stand by his nation to be insulted. Although Sky Dragon Empire did not have much of a relationship with him, he had transmigrated to this empire after all. Sky Dragon Empire was his home. What use was his cultivation if he were to sit on the sidelines and watch his empire suffer affront? Ha! The crowd burst into an uproar. The warriors were at a loss to see a useless Tier 5 warrior spirit of Sky Dragon Empire boldly challenge and fling abuse at a warrior king. Raw! I will tear you apart today, or my name isn't Bao. Blowing a fuse, Bao circulated his demonic energy. Amid the repression from the demonic energy, disciples of 10,000 Demons sect were able to easily unleash skills like duck to water. As a horrifying vigor rose steeply, Bao pounced at Li Tian like a wild beast. The way he saw it, one easy strike should take out this Tier 5 warrior spirit trash. I told you to kneel, you better listen. Watching as a tall and sturdy figure pounced over with an air of ripping vigor, Li Tian sneered at the vicious attack coming his way. Warriors who were staring at Li Tian and Bao from afar had foreseen the outcome. The Tier 5 warrior spirit Li Tian would be torn apart and meet his end. Countless powerhouses held in contempt of Li Tian's pretentious attitude, yet no one realized the change in Li Tian's vigor. Ah! Ah! As a silver glow flickered in air, two blood-curdling screams echoed throughout the land. For one to let out such a wail, the pain inflicted must be to a certain degree. Wham! Following a dull crash, Bao's sturdy frame crash-landed in front of Li Tian. However, Li Tian remained unscathed while Bao fell on his knees before him. This! What is going on? Why did he listen? He kneeled. No way, a warrior king kneeling before a Tier 5 warrior spirit? Bao was going to kill Li Tian in a single move. How did he end up kneeling towards Li Tian? He had forced such amazing vigor yet ended up kneeling. Two. For a moment, countless warriors were like fish out of water by the visual impact. The entire scene was so unusual that it took several seconds before they found their voices. Junior brother Li's earlier move was strange. He pulled his sword, but his speed surpassed the naked eye. He had crippled Bao with his blade aura. With surprise and admiration, Misty Pavilion's Wuji and another disciple exchanged their views in muffled voices. It was possible to cripple a warrior king in a single move. I told you to kneel, you should have listened earlier. Bam! Li Tian stared at Bao with a beaming grin. There was nothing in his hands as the purple-green sword was kept away. Deep down, he was pleasantly surprised by the might of this sword. Bao was crippled, yet not a single strand of the Onyx equipment's repression had leaked. Li Tian then raised his arm and unleashed his flaming divine fist before he pulled a punch at Bao. Bao, a 10,000 Demons sect warrior king equipped with great defense, was single-handedly burnt to crisps in the face of a flaming divine first in its conception. Strong defense, and yet this is all you can do. What garbage! Senior brother Dongfang, take a step back. Leave this to me. Li Tian replied indifferently while he curled his lip at the scorched Bao in a distance. He drew near Dongfang Qingyu and handed two 10,000 spirit pills to him. Junior brother, be careful. I am incompetent and have let down Sky Cloud's sect. With gratitude, Dongfang Qingyu accepted the pills and walked out. He had witnessed Li Tian's ability. If Li Tian was able to prevail over Duanmu Qing, a Tier 6 warrior spirit when he was a mere Tier 9 warrior, what was he now that he became a Tier 6 warrior spirit? The impeccable advancement of Li Tian's cultivation was a testament to his menacing competence. All of you here, is there anyone else who is unwilling to accept this? Even if you refuse to accept, your only choice is to sit and take it. Li Tian waited until Dongfang Qingyu left before he turned to the 10,000 demons sect's masters. He then swept a glance over to the powerhouses by the lake until finally, his gaze fell on Tian Wujin. Hiss! The crowd broke out into another uproar. Not only had he crippled Bei Ao in a single move, using the trashiest flaming divine fist to take down Bei Ao, but now he was making waves with all the powerhouses. The world had gone mad. Although this man had asked whether anyone remained defiant, they had to hold it in even if one refused to accept the result. This was blatant tyranny. Chapter 48, 1000 Shadows of Fluttering Flowers. Chapter 48, 1000 Shadows of Fluttering Flowers. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Li Tian, you have crossed the line, Shen Tian of Tianjin Empire's Divine Sword sect blurted coldly. Li Tian had taken a dig at them in the presence of 20-odd warriors and over 100 powerhouses. While others may not have had a clear look at how Li Tian defeated Bei Ao, Shen Tian saw it with his own eyes. For Li Tian to cripple a warrior king with a sword, it stirred a battle intent within him. The majority of disciples in Divine Sword sect were proficient in swordsmanship due to the powerful might that was driven by sword cultivation. It could be said that rarely anyone of the same tier was a match to these disciples. Having seen Li Tian demonstrate his sword technique, Shen Tian now wished to experience his technique firsthand. As a Tier 2 warrior king equipped with Divine Sword sect's Annihilation Sword, he thought little of Li Tian, a mere warrior spirit disciple. Cross the line. Did it occur to you that you've crossed the line when you humiliated my Sky Dragon Empire? If I have indeed crossed the line and got on your nerves, I can only apologize, but let me say this. Yes, I crossed the line, so come bite me, Li Tian replied dully. The calm look on his face had the warriors from Sky Dragon Empire hang their heads low in shame. His continued statement left many warriors thinking that Li Tian was backing down and looking for an out. However, it had never occurred to them that he would aggravate the situation. Whoa! The warriors may be gobsmacked, but the girls from Misty Pavilion, including Yiyi, burst into chuckles by this junior brother's humor. Yet in the face of countless masters, Li Tian remained collected. Fine, very good. Shen Tian smirked out of rage. He surged his bodily vigor and at the extent of his arm, a 3-foot-long sword emerged. A fierce blade aura immediately hovered over the sword. As the domineering blade aura soared upwards, the sword emitted an annihilating intent. Tyrannical Dragon Sword Technique's Annihilation Form. With rage burning in his eyes, Shen Tian swung his sword, causing a tremble in the air. As a powerful blade glare was sliced down towards Li Tian, many masters on site were ruffled by this luminous light. A Tier 2 warrior king could barely withstand the terrifying force from a warrior king's sword, let alone a Tier 5 warrior spirit. Although the incoming blade glare was within a 5-yard distance from Li Tian, he remained still. This left many others taken aback by his reaction as they assumed that Li Tian was scared stiff. Where was the same person who crippled Bei Ao in a single move? Why was he staring blankly at the blade glare? You think you're worthy of using a sword before me? Vast obscure extermination, die. Following a calm voice, Li Tian stretched his arm and unleashed an astonishing repression in an instant. At the same time, the foot-long purple-green sword in his hand released a domineering repression. An Onyx equipment. A mediocre Onyx equipment. Countless powerhouses gasped upon detecting the purple-green sword's repression. A spiritual equipment was considered quite domineering, yet this Sky Cloud sect's Tier 5 warrior spirit disciple brought out an Onyx equipment. While various powerhouses were caught by surprise, Li Tian's purple-green sword sliced through the air. The atmosphere turned rather unusual as a vast obscure extermination chi spread through the air and swiftly headed towards Shen Tian's blade glare in the form of countless sword shreds. Fizz fizz, fizz fizz. There were no explosions, only subtle noises as these sword shreds quickly corroded the mighty blade glare to nothingness. These sword shreds then continued its journey to Tian. Sword shield. Tian was shocked. His tyrannical dragon sword technique proved a great force and was a top-rate skill in divine sword sect. It had never crossed his mind that his warrior king state combined with his Onyx tier skill would be abolished by a tier 5 warrior spirit disciple. It took great force for a blade aura to transform into shreds. Even a divine sword sect's master could barely achieve such a feat. Since he was well aware of the shredded blade aura's might, Tian dared not take any chances. So, he drew his sword and soon a sword screen emerged. Swish swish, swish swish. Amid the collision between the sword shred and sword screen, many warriors stared blankly at Tian and Tian. With both of them demonstrating such sword techniques, it became these warriors' primary experience in witnessing the impact coming from sword techniques. Thousand shadows of fluttering flowers, die. Tian was brewing with killing intent. The vast obscure extermination was incapable of finishing Tian, a warrior king, and since the boat was already rocked, Tian had to be wiped out in an attempt to nip in the bud. At a casual swing of the purple-green sword in his hand, countless blade auras burst out in a radiant eruption. These hundreds and thousands of fallen leaves like blade auras were a force to be reckoned with altogether. Tyrannical dragon sword technique's invincible form. Tian felt as though he had shot himself in the foot. This warrior spirit disciple was so strong that his sword shield could only be subjected to defense. At the sight of his opponent's crushing blow, Tian was overwhelmed with terror. This feeling he had was as though he was faced with a warrior ascendant. So, Tian circulated the true chi from his whole body before he drew his sword to numerous domineering blade aura. Immediately, these blade auras came into blows with Tian's thousand shadows of fluttering flowers. Bam! The astounding demonic energy's repression was ripped apart by the explosion. As Tian's body swayed, he quickly circulated his breeze technique and retreated a few steps until he forced a secured footing. Ah! Tui! Following a loud cry, Tian spat out a mouthful of blood. His body was hurled up to the sky before it slammed down on the ground. With that, the colliding blade auras gradually receded. Dozens of blade auras had penetrated Tian's attack and pierced through his heart. He was long gone. The lakeside was pin-drop silent as everyone held their breaths. A Sky Cloud Sect's warrior spirit disciple had slaughtered 2 warrior king powerhouses in succession. There's finally some peace and quiet. It's time all of you put your heads together to think of a way to open Divine Dragon Palace's gate. Tian's voice broke the lake's silence and pulled many warriors back to reality. In contrast to Tian's indifference, they were all quivering in the knees. This young man was a terrifying existence indeed. Junior Brother Li. Junior Brother Li. Tian then walked towards the warriors of Sky Dragon Empire. When he arrived, even Zhou Qingqing, who was a warrior king, nodded in greeting. The other warriors greeted Tian as well, to which he nodded in a polite response. He then closed his eyes and did not say a word. What a powerful attack! A warrior king was killed in a single move. He's going to be in trouble for killing Divine Sword Sect's genius disciple. Sky Cloud Sect will suffer Divine Sword Sect's crushing blow. Shush, at least no one can defeat him here. For a moment, many warriors whispered in discussions. Although the voices were soft, Tian heard them all. He smirked inwardly. The fact that he was bold enough to kill a genius of Divine Sword Sect was evidence that he was not afraid of Divine Sword Sect. Let's begin by figuring a way to break the gate. Otherwise, our true chi would be exhausted before we get in. Death will be waiting for us then. Tian Wuji took a glance at Tian. He was not going to be hasty by striking Tian. Although he thought nothing of Tian, a tier 5 warrior spirit, he should refrain from stepping on anyone's toes with his enemies lurking around. The commanding tone prompted every warrior on site to crack their heads on opening this gate. Only by breaking through this gate could they enter Divine Dragon Palace. Make way, let me take a look. A young man walked out and strode forward. Many warriors did not say a word at the appearance of this youth. This was the super genius of Southern Empire's Nine Alps. Nine Alps was known to all for its powerful formation teachings, and they were an unrivaled presence of such in the Eastern Spirit Greenland. There was no one more authoritative than him here. Han Zhong hid his glee as he cast his gaze on numerous warriors who were in line and standing aside. Here, he was only considered below average in terms of cultivation level as a Tier 6 warrior spirit. Nevertheless, he reigned supreme in the way of formation. Chapter 49, Extortion. Chapter 49, Extortion. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Heavenly Mystery Unravel. Han Zhong carefully examined Divine Dragon Palace's gate. With the constant change of expression on his face, it was obvious he did not know where to begin with this gate. After a moment's wait, Han Zhong realized that many masters behind him had turned impatient. Hence, he swung his arms furiously in wielding a disc before spell after spells were cast over it. Suddenly, the foot-long disc emitted a radiant glow that had a hint of mystery to it which caused some of the warrior kings behind to gasp in admiration. Idiot, way to put on a show. Tian smirked at the sight of Han Zhong dabbling about the disc. Only he knew the way to open the gate. Others were delusional to think they could open it. What did you say? At the sound of Tian's voice, numerous warriors turned their gaze to him. They were about to blow their top but held it in when they noticed that it was Tian. I said he can't open this gate. He's merely trying to find himself an out. Tian answered in a flat tone while his gaze drifted upwards. The demonic energy's repression was thinning in the atmosphere. By the looks of it, the trip to Hidden Dragon Isle would be in vain if the gate could not be opened. Wham! Poof! As soon as Tian said that, the disc in Han Zhong's hands fired a radiance towards the gate. Then at the sound of an explosion, the gate was enveloped in a giant light barrier that repelled the disc's radiance. Han Zhong was physically blown away by the repelling force. It tossed him 100 yards away before he collapsed onto the ground like a dead pig. By the sheer stillness, it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Isn't there anyone who can open the gate? Our efforts will be in vain if we can't enter Divine Dragon Palace in 10 minutes, Tian shouted with his eyes fixed on Han Zhong afar. Tian was not going to give it in just yet. Even if he knew the way in, he was not going to let these guys have it the easy way. What did you say? In vain? Isn't Divine Dragon Palace here? Puzzled, the few warrior kings stared at Tian. Although Tian was only a warrior spirit disciple, no one dared to treat him like one. Are you blind? Can't you sense the weakening of demonic energy's repression? This means that Divine Dragon Palace is about to disappear, Tian answered with disdain as he pointed towards the sky. Compared to the beginning, the current repression had declined by a whole lot. After listening to Tian's statement, the warriors who had retreated 3 miles away were instantly intrigued. Although this meant that they would now be able to withstand the repression that was on a decline, they were held back by the sight of the warrior kings and first-rate masters. Is there anyone else who can open this gate? Otherwise, we just went on a wild goose chase. Anxious, Tian, Wuji and Xianghao both cried out. Since they were both warrior kings, they could sense the change in the atmosphere. They had waited for a long time yet no one spoke up. This was because no one dared to volunteer after Han Zhong, the formation master was thrown back by the impact. Garbage, a bunch of garbage. I'll do it then. Grinning inside, Tian took large strides forward and stopped 10 yards in front of Divine Dragon Palace. He stood erected on a spiritual equipment. You can open this gate? Well, hurry up then. Tian, Wuji and Xianghao were dumbfounded to see Tian come forth. Sure, Tian had skills but it was a different story in dealing with the gate. I can open this gate, but... Tian chuckled at the 300-odd warriors, and his eyes revealed slight mischief. But what? Get straight to the point. After opening this gate, you'll be the first to enter. They lost their patience at Li Lingtian's conditions. However, it was not the time to get on Li Lingtian's bad side. Putting his ability aside, only Li Lingtian was the only one who came forth when no one volunteered to open the gate. I can open this gate for you, but those who wish to enter Divine Dragon Palace are required to pay 100,000 spiritual stones, or else I won't bother wasting my breath. Li Lingtian may be speaking in an indifferent tone, but the words coming from his mouth left countless warriors gobsmacked. Fuck that, it's daylight robbery. 100,000 spiritual stones, do you think spiritual stones are plain rocks? You have gone mad thinking about spiritual stones. 100,000 spiritual stones. That's enough to buy out every premium spiritual equipment. For a moment, many gasped in exclamation. 100,000 spiritual stones were the annual income of a small-scale sect. An inner sect disciple of Sky Cloud sect only received 100 spiritual stones on a monthly basis. Even for an inner sect disciple, 100,000 spiritual stones required the accumulation of 100 years without deduction on food and other usages. Nevertheless, those present on site were geniuses of the Eastern Spirit Greenland supersects and clans. Hence, they were never short of spiritual stones. Li Lingtian owed it to himself to take the chance in extorting them. Junior brother Li has lost his mind. He's too cool. He must be the first to charge everyone spiritual stones. 100,000 spiritual stones. There are over 300 of us here. Our Misty Pavilion doesn't possess that much even in a year. Many disciples from Sky Dragon Empire were surprised and stunned. A Tier 5 warrior spirit was extorting countless masters for spiritual stones. He sure had the guts. You have 10 seconds to think it over. HL leave once the 10 seconds are up and... I won't be opening the gate then. Li Lingtian maintained an indifferent attitude, unconcerned of the dirty looks he was receiving from these super masters. Based on his 21st century wisdom and understanding of human behavior, he was able to grasp the mentality of these super geniuses. Fine, 100,000, I'll give it to you. 100,000. I'm not short of spiritual stones, consider it a reward. My Tian Gene Empire has plenty of spiritual stones. I'll give you 100,000. My Northern Dusk Empire is never lacking in spiritual stones. Come on, hand over the spiritual stones if you want to enter. I'll kill anyone who is holding us back. Speechless, Xiong Hao shot a menacing look at Li Lingtian. He was the first to take a stand and tossed 100,000 spiritual stones to Li Lingtian. The rest of the warriors then followed suit, forking out their spiritual stones reluctantly. Since the supersects, mysterious clans, and imperial prince were loaded, they could easily afford 100,000 spiritual stones. Moreover, anyone who entered Hidden Dragon Isle was familiar with slaughtering others for their goods. Take your time, one by one. I'm not in a hurry. Ignoring these guys who were missing out yet still tried to keep up appearances, Li Lingtian retrieved the large number of spiritual stones and kept them in his storage sack. In the distance, Lui's group remained appalled. It had never crossed their minds that a disciple of Sky Dragon Empire would make a fool out of these arrogant supermasters. Humph, I've given you the spiritual stones now, so if you can't open this gate, I'll be the first to kill you. You must be the one who killed my divine sword sect's Su Tian. Watch your back, Yan Ming responded coldly. He was incredibly surprised to find Su Tian dead, but he immediately connected the dots when he saw Li Lingtian unleash the domineering sword technique. It was the doing of this young man. Not bad, you're all rich. I've never seen this many spiritual stones, hehe. Li Lingtian looked at the dozen storage sacks in front of him that were all filled to the brim with spiritual stones. Over 36 million spiritual stones, he would not gain as much even in Sky Cloud sect in a year. 10 seconds? 100 seconds had passed. Are you playing us a fool? Li Lingtian's laid-back demeanor struck a thought in the few warrior kings. Li Lingtian mentioned from the start that the gate would not be opened after 10 seconds, yet over 100 seconds had passed. Did he just toy with them? I mean it when I said I can open it, but... Li Lingtian planned it out in his mind. He should make a run for it if he failed to open the gate later. Otherwise, he would be dead meat in the face of all these supermasters. Chapter 50, Pseudo-Dragon Beast's Inner Vital. Chapter 50, Pseudo-Dragon Beast's Inner Vital. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. But? What the F***ck is with the buts? You have received the spiritual stones, so if you don't open this gate, be prepared to regret being born to this world. 100,000 spiritual stones were their entire asset, and Li Ling Tian had milked them dry. There were a few warriors who did not have the lump sum, so Li Ling Tian accepted tens of thousands from them, draining them to their last drop. Yet, Li Ling Tian was still delaying the situation with his but. It would be odd if they did not flip their lid. After all, they had already pictured dismembering Li Ling Tian in their minds. The key to opening this gate is on the second prince. He's aware of it but is reluctant. If you want to put the blame on someone, it should be on the second prince. Li Ling Tian pointed at Tian Wuji. With rage, the warriors turned their gaze to the second prince, Tian Wuji. Li Ling Tian, I did you a great favor by giving you spiritual stones. Are you trying to seek an out because you can't open the gate? Tell me then, how can I open the gate? Tian Wuji was taken aback. Even as a prince of Tianjin Empire, he would die facing this many warriors. His anger had reached a boiling point. Yeah, how can the second prince open the gate? Don't bother thinking about looking for a way out of this. If the second prince can open the gate, would he fork out those spiritual stones in the first place? A few warrior kings were displeased to be played a fool, yet they had to hold it together. It was a god*mn awful feeling. The second prince's 100,000 spiritual stones are only a fraction of his treasures. I'm sure he would rather pay with spiritual stones. Moreover, he's not the only one paying. You would all reap the benefits if you were to take out the treasure, Li Ling Tian answered with a smile. Since his powerful divine mindfulness and soul had once sighted the pseudo-dragon beast, he could remember the demonic beast's chi. Since the integration of his souls, his divine mindfulness had grown stronger. He had detected the pseudo-dragon beast on the second prince much earlier, but it seemed to be contained in some treasure. What is it? Yan Ming blurted coldly. With his cold eyes glancing from the second prince and over to Li Ling Tian, Yan Ming surged his bodily vigor. The omnipotent vigor of a Tier 4 warrior king had many masters palpitating with fear. The inner vital of a pseudo-dragon beast is key to opening Divine Dragon Palace's gate. Take a look at the slot on the gate if you don't believe me. We must hurry if we want to open the gate, or else all would be in vain. Li Ling Tian pointed at the gate. There was a knuckle-sized slot, about the size of a 4th-tier demonic beast's inner vital, on the gate. He trusted Nine Yang's sacred lord's words because he would not lie to him. After all, Nine Yang's sacred lord was him, and he was Nine Yang's sacred lord. That's right. That's right, it's the slot for a 4th-tier demonic beast's inner vital. How did you know it's for the pseudo-dragon beast's inner vital? Are you bluffing? The few warrior kings scanned the gate with their divine mindfulness. When they realized that it was as Li Ling Tian had described, they began to presume it was true. I know a thing or two, as I have cultivated a type of mechanism art. It's not some formation on the gate but a numerological mechanism. The pseudo-dragon beast's inner vital is required to open Divine Dragon Palace's gate. There, I've given you the method, so opening the gates will rest on you now. Having said that, Li Ling Tian's eyes fixated on the second prince. It had nothing to do with numerological mechanisms, as Nine Yang's sacred Yang was the one who told him the method of getting in. Second prince, for the sake of entering Divine Dragon Palace, I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. Your Highness the second prince, you should hand the pseudo-dragon beast over. Although it's a 4th-tier pseudo-dragon beast, treasures are abundant within the palace. Surely, the beast can't compare in value. Are you trying to keep it a secret? We wouldn't have lost that many spiritual stones if you brought out the pseudo-dragon beast earlier. With the second prince, Tian Wuji, under fire, Li Ling Tian became an irrelevant presence. Ah, Li Ling Tian, I want to tear you to pieces. Tian Wuji erupted his body of vigor. Not only did he lose 100,000 spiritual stones, but he was also humiliated. Of course, he was ballistic to be made a sitting duck. A fourth-tier pseudo-dragon beast was comparable to a warrior ascendant but proved to be more practical than a warrior ascendant on the battlefield. However, he now had no choice but to hand out the pseudo-dragon beast under such circumstances. Second Prince, I'll be honest, you should take out the pseudo-dragon beast for everyone's sake. We will be grateful to your highness the Second Prince, Li Lingtian said with a faint smile, oblivious to the Second Prince's burning rage. Putting the question on whether he could fight a Tier 2 peak warrior king aside, escaping was an easy feat for Li Lingtian. Tui! Tian Wuji spat a mouthful of blood. He had never seen such a shameless person who could stir such rage in him. Pale in the face, the Second Prince was so enraged that he spat a mouthful of blood. If his eyes could kill, Li Lingtian would have been dead for over tens of thousands of times now. Fine, I'll bring out the pseudo-dragon beast but you will be the ones to kill it. Nevertheless, he kept a cool head. As Li Lingtian had remarkable skills, he would not gain an advantage if he were to act rashly. Besides, he stood no chance against all these lurking enemies. His only choice was to bring out the pseudo-dragon beast. Let's team up to kill the pseudo-dragon beast, Yao Tianxiong cried out. With that, all warriors kings and warrior spirits formed a large circle as they waited for Tian Wuji to release the pseudo-dragon beast. Roar, roar. Following a vibration in the air, the pseudo-dragon beast appeared out of thin air before these warriors and roared at its prey. Bam! Attack! Wham! The moment the beast made its appearance, countless fierce attacks were slammed onto the pseudo-dragon beast. Under these attacks, the fourth-tier pseudo-dragon beast, an existence equivalent to a warrior ascendant, had exhausted much of its energy before Tian Wuji used a ruse to trap it inside a treasure. As its injuries and demonic energy were restricted from recovery inside the treasure, the pseudo-dragon beast's demonic energy defense gradually vanished the moment it was let out and hit with worse attacks. Wham! After the loud crash, the giant pseudo-dragon beast was killed without putting up a struggle. Although it possessed the ability that was equal to a Tier 4 warrior ascendant, it still met its end in the face of several hundred warrior spirits and dozens of warrior kings. Tian Wuji was heartbroken to watch the death of the pseudo-dragon beast. This was his ace in the hole, yet it was taken down just like that. This prompted Tian Wuji to channel his anger onto Li Lingtian. Alright, leave it to me. Li Lingtian had been observing at the side with a hardened expression. The strength of a single warrior king was indeed powerful, and it was even more destructive with their strengths put together. Once the pseudo-dragon beast was dead, Li Lingtian stood up with Zhou Qingqing and the rest followed closely behind him. Several super empires and mysterious clans, excluding the group from Sky Dragon Empire, had given Li Lingtian hundreds of thousands of spiritual stones. The people from Sky Dragon Empire could not afford to, but neither did Li Lingtian request any from them. Instead, they were instructed by Li Lingtian to charge forward once they entered Divine Dragon Palace. Otherwise, they might suffer attacks from other masters. Li Lingtian skillfully retrieved the inner vital. The omnipotence of a fourth-tier demonic beast's inner vital was foretelling from the spread of its heavy demonic energy. If refined, the inner vital could advance one's cultivation by several states, but no warrior spirits or warriors would chance on refining it hastily. This inner vital was also the main ingredient in refining grade 4 or 5 pills. However, its purpose now was to open Divine Dragon Palace's gate. Let me return this to you. Li Lingtian held the inner vital and flew towards the gate, but not before kicking the pseudo-dragon beast's carcass towards the second prince, Tian Wuji. His actions had enraged Tian Wuji as he spat another mouthful of blood. Looking at the slot on the gate, Li Lingtian prayed earnestly for the gate to open. Otherwise, he would end up as the attack target of all the warriors here. If opening the gate was a success, the other warriors would take into consideration his ability despite their desire to kill him. However, these warriors would go berserk and lose their minds over him if it were the contrary. Although Li Ling Tian was a foot away from placing the inner vital into the slot, it felt as if it had taken him a year to get there. Click. Fizz fizz. Bam. The moment the inner vital was placed into the slot, the gate let out a piercing sound. A tiny crack then revealed and a destructive demonic energy whizzed past. Ah, ah. Countless warriors in front of the gate were immediately strangled to death by this demonic energy. Even the warrior kings were thrown back by this force, which caused them to sustain cuts all over their body. Come, let's go in. Li Ling Tian pushed forth an arm to hasten the opening of the heavy gate. Once the gate had opened a foot wide, he contorted his body before he made a dash inside. After disappearing into the gate in the blink of an eye, Zhou Qingqing and her group swiftly jumped on the bandwagon. For a while, many warriors poured into the gate in a mad dash. Chapter 51, Dragon Abysm. Chapter 51, Dragon Abysm. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Swish swish, swish swish. Over 300 warriors quickly scrambled through Divine Dragon Palace's gate, even the warriors afar raced over. Li Ling Tian arrived into another world the moment he stepped into the gate. In fact, the tiny-looking silver palace from the outside was vast on the inside. Unlike the insides of a palace, it was an independent world with mountains, water, and lakes instead. Besides, the atmosphere carried a rich spiritual qi that had a slight hint of demonic energy. What rich spiritual qi? Li Ling Tian was shocked to find quite a substantial spiritual qi. However, he dared not linger long. Since he had stepped on the toes of every possible warrior in Eastern Spirit Greenland, he would definitely meet his end if he encountered them. With that, he bolted 3 yards away in flash and relaxed a little when he did not find any warriors tailing him behind. Roar! At that moment, a piercing violent roar sent a shiver down Li Lingtian's spine before a pair of vicious eyes fixated on him. What the hell, what luck? A 4th tier level 1 copper bell beast. A demonic beast towering at 15 feet and as wide as 30 feet had eyes the size of a bowl while its body released a powerful qi. This 4th tier level 1 beast had similar capabilities to a warrior ascendant. What luck did Li Ling Tian have to encounter such an insane demonic beast upon entry? Run, only an idiot would not take off. With his gaze on this powerful copper bell beast, Li Ling Tian circulated his body of true qi to unleash his breeze technique to its summit and made a run for it. Only an idiot would stay to fight a 4th tier copper bell beast. Not to mention, warriors were coming ahead. With a demonic beast at the front and warriors in the back, he was not one to be caught in a sandwich. Roar, roar. With sounds of roar thundering behind him, Li Ling Tian wished that he could climb on all fours. It took 5 minutes of running before the growling sounds eventually faded. Although the howls may be gone, a powerful explosion ensued. Needless to say, someone had met with another streak of bad luck. Ha! This is a 1,000-year wooded sunflower. A foot-tall tricolor flower was covered in a layer of heavy spiritual qi. Moreover, the area within 10 yards was also clouded with spiritual qi. The flower was about the size of a knuckle and had dark green leaves. There were only 7 leaves on it, but these leaves released the same richness of spiritual qi. Li Ling Tian was ecstatic to see this tricolor flower because this was the main ingredient for a grade 5 pill. If sold outside, this 1,000-year herb was worth tens of thousands of spiritual stones. Mine. Without any hesitation, he gestured a spell to retrieve this 1,000-year wooded sunflower. As an apothecary, he was well aware of the method to preserve this medicinal herb. It did not take him long to retrieve this 1,000-year wooded sunflower before he searched for other medicinal supplies. In a place that was rich with spiritual qi, coming across such 100 or 1,000-year herbs was effortless. In the course of a day, Li Ling Tian had collected up to 100,000-year medicinal supply, and this made him exhilarated. There were an infinite of 100-year and 500-year medicinal supplies here. Just like that, Li Ling Tian began on a journey of searching for medicinal supplies and slaughtering demonic beasts without restraint. There were no 1st and 2nd tier demonic beasts in here, only 3rd and 4th tier demonic beasts. Li Ling Tian had more than enough capability to kill 3rd tier demonic beasts, but 4th tier demonic beasts were a different story. Hence, he could only try to steer clear of 4th tier demonic beasts, and in the circumstances which he could not, he would unleash his trump card. As days went by, Li Ling Tian had lost count of the medicinal supply he had collected in his storage sack. He had at least 70 or 80 3rd tier inner vitals as well as 7 inner vitals that belonged to 4th tier demonic beasts. He made sure to collect valuable inner vitals and blood essence, as these were the apothecary's favorite materials. As always, Li Ling Tian only moved in one direction in search of materials. On this day, he arrived at a humongous mountain range that was entwined with spiritual qi as thick as a fog. What a heavy spiritual qi! That's not right, there seems to be vast demonic energy in the spiritual qi. While he was on his way, the demonic energy grew stronger the deeper he went. With that sign, he knew that he was in the right direction. As he approached the mountain, the demonic energy had reached a threshold. However, this demonic energy was stronger than the demonic energy's repression at the lake outside. Roar! Roar! Just then, the entire hidden dragon isle, including Divine Dragon Palace, trembled at an eruption of roar. Li Ling Tian spat out a mouthful of blood. This voice was not a sound wave attack, and instead, it carried an astounding repression. Although he had quite the capability, he was as weak as an ant before this voice. The roar of a dragon. It's the draconic might, the real draconic might. Li Ling Tian trembled deep down. It was unclear whether it was due to excitement or revere, but above this huge mountain range, a golden phantom figure vaguely appeared. He was thrown off at the sight of the golden phantom figure. This was the legendary dragon from his past life, a golden dragon, a powerful golden dragon. All living beings prostrated in worship under the draconic might. In his past life, Cathay's totem was a dragon. Although the belief of dragons' descendants was only a legend, the children of Cathay believed that they were the descendants of a dragon. It had never crossed his mind that he would witness, with his very own eyes, such legend. This was the real golden dragon, even though it was only in the form of a phantom figure. Snarl! After the draconic might sounded for 9 times, the mountain range split open before it swiftly diminished it to an illusion of nothingness. Li Ling Tian, too, had entered a mirage. A virtual world. This place is all a mirage. At the disappearance of the mountain range, Li Ling Tian finally caught an inkling of the situation. This mountain range was an illusion, an almighty spell cast by a great master. Li Ling Tian was in a fragile state of mind after entering the virtual world. Barren land was in plain sight, yet spiritual qi filled every inch of the place. This was the dragon world in ancient times. There were giant skeletal frames around. With each skeleton about 300-odd feet in length, it was not hard to guess the omnipotence of a real dragon prior to its death. All these skeletal frames were also releasing a powerful draconic energy. His Tier 5 warrior spirit's cultivation level, which was equivalent to the existence of a warrior king, was nothing compared to these skeletons. Dragons, the presence of true gods. I, as a mere warrior spirit, am only an ant, Li Ling Tian mumbled in an attempt of self-comfort. Li Ling Tian's mind was overwhelmed by the countless powerful draconic bones. It was quite a visual impact. Under this shock, Li Ling Tian trod step by step forward. It was unknown how many skeletal frames he had walked past on the way, but these skeletons that varied in size once belonged to powerful dragons. Tui! Li Ling Tian spat out a mouthful of blood. Even he was weighed down to blood spitting when faced with such boundless draconic qi. It took a while before a grand palace entered his vision. The palace was 100 yards in height, but its length behind went on for miles. Huge draconic bones rested on both sides of the palace. Dragon Abysm. Approaching the palace, Li Ling Tian could see the 2 calligraphic words written in bold brushstrokes on top of the wide door. The forceful brushstrokes gave out a vibe of pressing force. Hu man, welcome to the Dragon Abysm. A commanding voice came from inside the palace. The voice may be faint, but it brought about an almighty draconic might. The tone sounded stiff, as though it had been over hundreds of centuries since it had spoken any words. Following the voice, the palace doors opened up. The overcast resembled the time before Earth was created. Li Tian could not help but walk in. Within his vision was a spacious palace where over 100 giant dragons dwelled. Each giant dragon, about 100 yards in size, emitted an astonishing draconic might and demonic energy. These giant white dragons formed 2 rows, leaving a 10-yard wide passageway in the middle. At the sight of these giant dragons, Li Tian felt as though he had fallen into a bottomless abyss at the sight of these giant dragons. Although the cultivation level of these giant dragons was unknown, the repression alone was enough to crush him alive. Humans were really a measly ant before these giant dragons. Then, Li Tian's face turned pale white while his eyes reeked of terror. Chapter 52, True Dragon Body Barrier. Chapter 52, True Dragon Body Barrier. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Ha! They aren't alive. Li Tian soon realized these giant dragons had not moved at all and there were no signs of life in them. Otherwise, the repression from a single giant dragon would have reduced him to ashes. We have no life. Right in the center of the palace, a golden phantom figure flickered in front of a huge throne. It had the face of a human and the body of a giant dragon. The phantom figure suspended in the air on top of the giant dragon, like a wandering soul. This golden dragon phantom figure gazed straight at the human before it, which left Li Tian feeling as though the gaze saw through him. "Human, you come from the deep blue planet," the golden dragon phantom figure faintly said as the astounding draconic chi and energy entwined around the golden dragon. It only took the utterance of a single sentence to drain a faction of both the draconic chi and energy. "How did you know?" Li Tian was horrified. Only Nine Yang's Sacred Lord knew of this secret, and since Nine Yang's Sacred Lord was fearful of Divine Dragon Palace, he did now know how the golden dragon had seen through his secret. "I have been to the deep blue planet. Your principal form had attempted to enter here several times, but it was to no avail. I didn't expect for you to merge your souls." The golden dragon phantom figure may have answered nonchalantly, but it caused quite a stir in Li Tian. "I see, you've been to Earth." Li Tian had it figured out. The golden dragon did exist on Earth, but it had crossed dimensions to arrive here in the end. The shift in dimensions and difference in time between both spaces were the reason why fabled dragons only lived in the legends. Since this golden dragon had seen through him, there was no point in hiding. Moreover, he had no instinct to resist this golden dragon. "Human, fate has led you here. I will give you a choice. You can either remain here forever or accept my offer." The golden dragon phantom figure went straight to the point. Darting a stare at Li Tian, a streak of excitement flashed by the golden dragon's gigantic eyes so fast that Li Tian failed to capture it. "What offer?" Li Tian's heart sank. Although he had made it all the way here, his life was not in his hands. Surely, it must be an offer he could not refuse. However, he immediately came to grips with it. For a giant dragon to make a deal with him, there must be something it was after. "You have the flaming sacred body and ice vitality soul. You will remain here forever if you can't cultivate it within a day. Come and discuss the deal with me once you can do so." At the swing of the golden dragon phantom figure's arm, a golden symbol weighed down on Li Tian. This golden symbol brought forth an astounding repression, including the great draconic might and dignity. Poof, thump. The golden symbol's repression crashed onto Li Tian, leaving him deeply wounded. Li Tian cursed inwardly, "Motherf asterisk cur, you want me to cultivate this sh*t, yet you gave me such severe injury. God asterisk eminent, I can honestly lose my life facing this big guy." The giant dragon was easily the size of 100 yards, towering as vast as a hill, while Li Tian's build was no more the size of its toe. A simple slap of its claw could land him beaten black and blue. Bam! Taking the form of a phantom, the golden symbol snuck into his mind. As though he was struck, pain was written all over Li Lingtian's face. Ah! Following a loud cry, Li Lingtian passed out. This sort of pain was more gruesome than Nine Yang's Sacred Lord's Nine Yang's Sacred Fire. It was unknown how long it had been when Li Lingtian gained consciousness, but he quickly lost it again. The moment he fainted, Li Lingtian found himself in a dusky world without the presence of those giant dragons. Ah! 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 There were multiple times in which he regained consciousness, but every time he opened his eyes, he blacked out once more. God *Eminent, this will be the death of me. By the time he woke up, his body was completely numb. Gritting his teeth, Li Lingtian faintly mumbled as he examined his surroundings in pain. King Hell, it's all draconic chi here. The fact that he was submerged in draconic chi explained the great pain he was in. The golden dragon phantom figure had brought him here when he lost consciousness. True dragon body barrier. There were no words to describe the suffering he felt on his body. When he recalled the golden symbol given by the golden dragon phantom, Li Lingtian circulated his divine mindfulness to the appearance of golden symbols running inside his head. These symbols turned out to be a technique of the dragon clan. The true dragon body barrier, a dragon clan's technique, was said to be unrivaled amongst the demonic tribe. It was an existence that bore comparison to the human scripture. Defense to the demonic tribe meant an indestructible body. Their physique was their strongest defense. Needless to say, the king of the demonic tribe was the dragon clan, so the dragon clan must have reigned supreme over the demonic tribe. Who would have thought that the dragon clan would possess its own techniques? It was no wonder they were omnipotent. This is the dragon clan's almighty scripture, true dragon body barrier. How am I supposed to cultivate it in a day? Li Lingtian swore out loud. Others may pass out happy to obtain such a scripture, but Li Lingtian was annoyed to be the recipient. A scripture, the so-called scripture, was a supreme presence. Competency and gift were not the sole conditions to cultivate it, but luck and great wisdom played a huge role as well. For him to cultivate this scripture in a day, he might as well bang his head on the wall and die. My body. Whilst swearing, Li Lingtian was surprised to find that his physique had improved by multiple folds as the result of the draconic chi's tempering. In fact, his body was gradually merging with the draconic chi. Let me give it a go. Li Lingtian concluded that the golden dragon phantom figure's intention was not to harm him when it hurled him into this draconic chi and gave the scripture to him. After all, he had never heard that the dragon clan had a habit of torturing. Back in his mind, he sorted out the golden symbols. There were 9 layers to the true dragon body barrier. The first layer of the true dragon body barrier was the earth dragon's energy. Cultivating the first layer would earn him the earth dragon's defense and might, bringing his flesh to emulate that of a powerful earth dragon. The true dragon body barrier was not only a passive bodily defense, but it was also a domineering attack. Cultivating the first layer would unleash the earth dragon's energy and enable one to take after the attack of an earth dragon in a single strike. Draconic energy, retrieve. Owing to his past life's wisdom and comprehension, it took Li Lingtian 3 whole hours to fathom the first layer of the true dragon body barrier. He then began to cultivate. The emphasis of this technique was on strengthening the body. Now that Li Lingtian was surrounded by rich and pure draconic chi, he was in the perfect circumstance to cultivate the first layer earth dragon's energy. This will be the end of me. As he circulated the true dragon body barrier, an astonishing draconic chi surged into his body. For a moment, Li Lingtian felt as if his body was about to burst apart. Even though he was in possession of flaming sacred body, and had the fire dragon's heart and immemorial ice crystal refined, the domineering draconic chi still pushed him to the verge of bursting. At this point, he could only circulate the true dragon body barrier to swiftly refine and straighten out the draconic chi. As the draconic chi continued to temper Li Lingtian, cracks continuously presented all over his body. However, these cracks were immediately repaired as soon as they appeared. It was an endless cycle of cracks and repair. In a distance, the golden dragon phantom figure's gigantic eyes revealed its satisfaction. This human was full of surprises. He had the will to withstand the body tempering of the draconic chi. He has surpassed my expectation. He'll be able to endure green dragon's chi over him if he cultivates earth dragon's energy, the first layer. The fate of my dragon clan will depend on you. The golden dragon phantom figure murmured to itself. The destruction of the dragon clan was no coincidence, and no one knew that the entire clan met its doom here. You're tuning into the Passion Page's YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.